Welcome back, SMITE fans, to the Summer Solstice EUSCC Gauntlet. And for the first time this entire event, we're not going to be talking about the Yomi Tanuki. Instead, it's Niflheim Wargs and Hex Mambo in our final matchup of the Gauntlet to see which of these two teams will not only win out and get themselves a nice little bit of prize money, but also which one is going to be coming out to Alpharetta to play in our Roll Stars land later on. Let's take a look, though, at this bracket, because it's been all Yomi Tanuki for the first 4 sets of this event. And like I said, for the first time, we are not going to be talking about the Yomi Tanuki in a pregame. Instead, it's going to be moving into Niflheim Wargs and Hex Mambo, your number 1 and 2 seed, to square off to see which one, again, will be winning out on the Gauntlet event in this final best of 3. And then, don't worry, next weekend, we'll be coming back with North America as well to run it all back, the exact same style and format, to see which 2 SCC teams will be representing in the Roll Stars event. Should be an exciting set that we've got ahead of us, because we haven't had a chance to talk about Hex Mambo at all. I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me here on the desk. Tell me to break this one down, because we just saw what the Wargs were able to do. A 3-game set against the Yomi Tanuki, a rough game number 1, a much more dominant game 2, and especially game 3 by the Wargs. Mifflin, now they're going up against Hex Mambo, a team that's only made 1 roster change since Masters. They swap out their mid laner to bring Sap7 back in. But this is Spudio, Kha'Zix, Sap7, Johnny, Julio, Hex Mambo, a dangerous squad for Niflheim Wargs to go up against.
And I think Hex Mambo is so interesting, probably just because of their jungler, right? Johnny has had a whole lot of eyes on him as of recent. When I talk to the European SEC players at LAN, you know, we always have these conversations at SEC LANs, North America, Europe, which one's better? Every European player said, we're better because I have to practice against Johnny, because I have to play against him every week, because he's in my scrims, and he just absolutely dominates the pace of game. And that level of respect from your contemporaries is absolutely ridiculous, but simultaneously warranted. And it's not just Johnny that makes Hex Mambo such a successful team. It's really the whole of this roster.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about some powerhouses on the Hex Mambo squad, not just Johnny over there, obviously I talk about the entirety, but I also got to point out Julio. Whenever we had him here at the Masters event, if I'm not mistaken, in his first 4 sets of play over the course of 8 games, didn't drop a single one, Hex Mambo. And Julio died 5 times in those 8 games against his SCC counterparts there. Hard to kill this man over in the solo lane, and it's been a difficult task for just about every team to go up against him. Well, let's see if the Niflheim Wargs can do so. And so, at least there on the roster page, if you missed the last set with the Niflheim Wargs, a quick run back of their roster: Davey, Preds, Hawk, Wursturtle, and Panvich to round this one out. Just found their win up against the Yomi Tanuki, had themselves a nice run over at Masters as well. I believe they were only stopped at the very end of it by not only Hex Mambo, but by some of the SPL teams as well. And this is, again, another roster that hasn't had to make too many changes since their previous inception, have stuck with the core of their group out here, and it's worked out really well for them.
Yeah, I think that this matchup in particular is going to be really interesting in the duo lane. Spudio up against Davey, Kha'Zix up against Preds. I feel like that's a lot of the action that we're going to see at least throughout the first 25, 30 some odd minutes of these games. And I'm confident in saying that we're going to get to those points just by nature of it being a European matchup. And these guys generally do like to take it a bit later into the match, really do put heavy emphasis on that late game 5-on-5 stack, these elongated battles around Gold Furies and Fire Giants. And we've also got the data of the previous set to indicate that that might be what we're in store for. But if anything, if Hex Mambo were paying any attention to the last set, and I have to imagine they were, there's one thing I don't want to see in the hands of Niflheim Wargs. And I think it's pretty clear. It's something we've been talking about for Tanuki as well. You got to get Wursturtle off this Thor. He's a Thor specialist, and truthfully, it'd be very difficult to defeat him on it.
It almost kind of feels like we've shifted away from what used to be the talk of EU was Heimdall for your hunter. Don't give a hunter Heimdall, because they're probably just going to win the game.
That was usually
especially
Spudio.
Certain players. There's Spudio, Streak Up made his way up there. Obviously, Coast, when he was a part of that lineup back there. E-Chrome got just insert European hunter, give them Heimdall is probably a win. Feels like that's now shifted over for Thor for some of these teams. So we'll see if Hex Mambo maybe picks up Thor for themselves. Though if they do, we haven't really seen Johnny play too much to the Thor. Julio's been going towards a lot more of the tanky style of solo laners. Things like the King Arthurs, the tiers have kind of popped in more so for Julio as of recent, especially during his time at the Masters event. So if the Thor does get slotted, not sure who it goes to on Hex Mambo in that regard, but definitely don't want to get over to the hot hands of the Niflheim Wargs.
No, the Wargs have got some practice on it as well. But you're right to say that that is not solidly within the God pool. Is Johnny capable of playing Thor? Yes. Blanket statement, absolutely yes. And he's going to be one of the top 20 Thors on the planet, right? But when I think of Johnny and his god pool, I immediately go towards the auto attackers and maybe a little bit more so towards the eclectic. Things like the Loki jungle, the Kali jungle, the Bakasuras really get involved early on, have good scaling into the late game. The WM1 assassins. When I think of Julio, as you said, it's the hyper-aggressive. I want to box in lane. I want to have top player damage for the entirety of the match. I could do nothing in a team fight, but I'll have it because I had fought so often in lane. The Tiers, the King Arthurs, the Cucullins, things along those lines. And so, with Hex Mambo having a slightly different god pool when compared directly against the rest of the European SEC, I wonder if it then becomes a little bit more difficult for the Wargs in picks and bans.
Yeah, because it really feels like they're almost playing two entirely different games, specifically on that right side of the map between the jungle and the solo laner. But we move over to the dual lane. It's a lot of similarity, a lot of parity between the mid laners as well. So we'll see how things shake up here in picks and bans for game number 1, our final set of the EU-SCC Gauntlet between the number 1 Hex Mambo and the now number 2 Niflheim Wargs, who just got their win up against the Yomi Tanuki in a 3-game set prior. Now moving in to this final set for game number 1. I actually wanted to pull up the stats to maybe see, how many games each of those two players had that we mentioned for Hex Mambo on the Thor. Julio, not a single game. Hasn't played tier 1s competitively, at least. Not to say he hasn't played in whatever other modes. Johnny's got about 20 games on it, 60% win rate. But also, maybe a staggering stat that I pulled up, Julio has 61 games on tier. His next closest is 30 on Guan Yu. He has played twice as much tier as any other god or more in his god pool.
So I think maybe with your data analyst there, we should hypothetically be seeing at least one tier game in this set. And it won't be in this match because the Wargs similarly have pulled up the stats and said, well, tier seems to be his most played god by a significant margin. Let's get him off of it. But in doing so and dedicating some bans to these targets like Kuzumbo, like tier, things that aren't exactly at the top of the meta right now, that does leave open Martikaras, and Martikaras is at the top of the meta. If you've been following SMITE discourse in any of the social media avenues, be it Reddit or Twitter or anything like that, you see all the discussion around Martikaras and his massive damage numbers, all the stats that he affords his team, additional movement speed, stealth fields, defense shred. If it exists, he's got it, and he does it well, and Hex Mambo's got him.
Yeah, I mean, Martikaras has just been a menace on the battleground pretty much ever since he jumped in and first became competitively viable for play. It seems that he's been, whether in those top 3 bans or in those top 3 style of picks. Opposite side, though, it is Sun Wukong and Serket for Niflheim Wargs, and a Hercules lock-in with a current Maui hover for Hex Mambo. Giving that one over to their support would be a great way to start up and get some of that non-committal CC and initiation for their team. Being able to throw that landfall, cutting off the path, especially for some of the less mobile gods, is such a keen option whenever you pick up a god like Maui.
Yeah, that wall from Maui, I think, maybe one of his less respected abilities. Everyone talks about the triple pull, the stuns, all those, the mystical Alua, but the wall in Landfall is legitimately so disruptive in jungle team fights that it's easy to forget because often it is prefaced by that massive pull, usually AoE as well, but that wall can really put a stopper on things like Sun Wukong and his cat stance, or maybe even Oleron drops a Sanctified Field. You can completely cut off the entirety of that pathway. And so I think Maui, although prioritized pretty highly this weekend, maybe still deserves a little bit more credit in the SMITE Pro League. Things I haven't been seeing this weekend that has finally started to rear its head is this Hercules. Feels like that pick had completely fallen off the face of the planet. It's a great frontliner. Healing items still generally very good. Feels like Hercules still has a home in the meta.
Yeah, it's certainly within Julio's realm of play as well. He's had quite a bit of time on there, a fairly successful pick for him over the course. But it will be an Oleron Agni for the Niflheim Wargs. Oleron right before the ban phase, Agni after. And with a couple of bans allocated towards Johnny with the Bakasura and the Raven, puts him over to the Camazotz, which has been on the rise this event specifically. We saw kind of signs of life of it during Masters, but it was only a couple of select players going towards it. Now it feels like everyone's getting the hands on the bat this time.
Yeah, I wonder if Camazotz is getting prioritized by nature of Camazotz being good, or if is it because Oleron's back and we want to have a direct answer to that. Seems like it might just be the latter. Having that ability to use Bat Out of Hell to ignore Sanctified Field is just very valuable. Anything that you can do in Sanctified Field to make Oleron think twice about standing still and being an artillery cannon with his auto attacks is just incredibly valuable, and Camazotz has that.
Going with the Camazotz will be a Scylla for Hex Mambo to round out their draft, and an E-set at the very tail end for Niflheim Wargs. We saw a little bit of E-set support in our last set. I'm going to be seeing it one more time here for the Niflheim Wargs, drafted along with that Agni and Oleron. A lot of magical damage focused on this team. Serket, we've been seeing a lot of kind of this pseudo-tanky style of build, a little bit of defense thrown in there, kind of get some of your mixed power. And then the Sun Wukong obviously likes to get a lot more of that bruiser style mentality. So it feels kind of like a very W key style of composition for Niflheim Wargs. We'll see if that can work up against Hex Mambo to see who's going to take the lead in this set for game number 1 between Hex Mambo and Niflheim Wargs. Starts off right here and right now. Again, it's J-Mac Mifflin and Doug joining us on Spectator as we jump into our first game. And I'm excited for this one, Miff. We got our top 2 seeds of the EOSCC, teams that have always had strong performances, especially when you bring them out against some of the SPL talent, and certainly against their SCC counterparts as well.
And so, I'm trying to figure out which one of these teams strikes first. I think you're right in saying that the Wargs have got a composition that could get pretty aggressive, but it feels like it's more so slanted towards post-ultimate. You really want to take over to level 5 before each of these picks has massive potential. Where would you put that action? It's almost entirely up to Worst Total, right? If Surcat decides to gank dual lane, feels like he's got some pretty decent targets there. Could even start making some of those rotations towards mid. Haven't talked about it just yet, but the ability to just jump onto a Scylla is phenomenal for Surcat. That double mobility to chase out the Sentinel, the ultimate just to jump on her back even when she's in the I'm a Monster to continue that chase out as well. Very good. I'll be keeping my eyes on Worst Turtle. Feels like the onus of the early game almost entirely belongs to him.
Now, one thing I'm noticing right away between the supports, that's kind of where some of the discussion has been with these two teams out here. We've been seeing an immense amount of War Flag this week, and feels like that it's become the #1 support item for a lot. It lets you get really aggressive in the early game. For the first time, though, in what feels like for majority of this tournament, we're actually seeing Kazakhs shy away from the War Flag, going towards the Sentinels instead, trying to maybe just get a little bit more oriented protections for not just himself, but for his team as well.
Yeah, I wonder. The additional aura defense is really good into poke-style compositions, things that are going to play towards the edge of maximum range, and that's exactly what Agni does. Maybe it's an answer to the Agni. It's also decent against these all-in style picks. If Worst Turtle wants to dedicate the entirety of his kit to trying to shut down individual targets, any bit of additional defense that Kazakhs can afford his team would be very valuable. I wonder if that's the only shift up we'll see in the build, or if it's just the starter item. I'll be keeping my eyes on that too.
Gauntlet Thieves, Sovereignty, Pridwin, those have pretty much become the core for a lot of the supports.
You still got to get the staples.
Over the course. And pretty much Thieves has just been the staple support item. We saw a little bit of things like Prophetic Cloak sometimes picked up, but then almost always coupled with Thieves a little bit later on, one of those kind of two. But haven't been seeing as much of the Prophetic from the supports anymore. It really feels like Thieves has become the centerpiece for your support builds to start things out now. For these junglers, I think you're right to say that keeping your eye on Worst Turtle on this Surcat, where does he put his options to? And is there really maybe a better option for Worst on this Surcat? Do you go on the mid lane and try and keep the Surcat, the Scylla down, or do you try and maybe go over to one of these side lanes, deal with Julio or Spudio?
Surcat is uniquely suited at dealing with Martikaras. Martikaras being so safe thanks to that death from above, the ability to banish yourself and just stay off the play field for a little while, does not immune the true damage from Surcat's ultimate, so that dot still could find some value. The rest of your team around, Davey should be able to have decent poke from range off the back of a taunt from Surcat, or even Preds with follow-up CC. So, ideal world for Worst Turtle is rotate towards duo lane, trying to get something happening to Marty so that he isn't scaling too well into that mid to late game phase. Otherwise, Surcat generally is just very good at ganking everyone, just by nature of being so self-sufficient. Has CC for herself, has the burst, has the kill secure, and so can do it just about anywhere. But if I got to choose, yeah, send it towards Spudio.
Especially with how prevalent Marty just becomes in the late game, how much burst damage he has. I mean, we talked all about it during the picks and bans, just how strong of a pick it is, and every time it seems that we see it on field, it's worked out really well for those players. So we'll see. At least where Worst Turtle, and maybe where Johnny also puts his focus, because it feels like there's two play styles of Johnny, and they're very distinct play styles. It's the I'm not doing anything until I'm at least 4 or 5 items deep in the build and I'm level 20 and now I'm going to fight, or I've hit level 5, we're fighting now kind of Johnny. At the moment, it seems that we might be leaning a little bit more towards the former of those, the wait a little bit longer towards the game, get his build online. We also haven't seen him get that first item to maybe kind of hit that gas pedal just yet.
Yeah, it has really slowed down his build compared to Worst Turtle on the other side. Transcendence in first slot takes a little while to find its value. Camazotz won't struggle stacking it up, but will give an opportunity to Worst Turtle to do exactly this, get involved first.
Julio gets a push towards Worst Turtle and will walk into the jungle, but he's baiting some time for Johnny to go through. Jump out by Worst Turtle. Panvich not able to get the last shot onto Julio either. Julio walks out, but now will Johnny be able to get away? Does have ultimate, does have leap, so plenty of gap creation and escape for the Camazotz. But now it's Sap in danger, stunned out twice in the mid lane, but gets the Sentinel away just in time. And now a pull back in from Kha'Zix. Johnny goes back in, Bat Out of Hell available, and will use it to try and dive that tower. One more swoop will do. And it's first blood for Hex Mambo. And with Worst Turtle just off the mark with that Cobra's Kiss, Hex Mambo will walk out unscathed.
I was just going to talk about how maybe if Vampiric Bats lands on the right-hand side of the map, we're talking about first blood real early. And before we can even talk about it, Johnny's already made his second rotation to a team fight. Gets involved in mid and turns around that kill. I like the idea from the Wargs. There's so much action happening on the right. Let's make something happen in mid quickly. But that dash from Hawk, just hyper-aggressive, doesn't quite have the damage just yet. I don't believe had made his way back to base yet either. So Spear of Desolation, although done now, was not accessible previously. And so, being so light on damage, even with the help of Preds, Sap 7 walks out with around 40% HP. And then the late beads at that, J-Mac. Hawk in the air, turns golden, lands into his death. An unfortunate sequence for the Niflheim Wargs mid laner. Early on, Hex Mambo striking first, but gold not separated. Even with first blood bounty over to the Hex Mambo, the Wargs at times nursing a slight lead.
Panvich certainly trying to take these totems away, and that seems to be where at least the majority of the gold has gone for Niflheim Wargs. 4 totems to 1, so a little bit more global gold for the team over anything else. So at least for Panvich, keeping his team alive through that one singular objective. But now for Niflheim Wargs, also seems that left side of the map, we've seen early rotations from Kha'Zix to head over towards lane. For a while, we were hitting a meta where it was level 8, sometimes even level 9 before we'd see the supports even leave the duo lane. This time through, it's at least allowed the Niflheim Wargs, by Kha'Zix leaving lane early, has allowed them to get a lot more of these shield buffs.
Yeah, and has been good for him, allowing Davey to put himself in a good position now, about a half-level lead over Spudio and lane. I don't imagine we see too much action between the two of them. If both ADCs are left alone on an island, I don't think either is really going to have the greatest kill confirmation on the other. It's a similar counterplay from Artikaras into Oleron as it is from Camazotz. Just remove yourself from the playfield, continually reapply damage to Oleron. But as far as poke is concerned, it's a stain in lane. Davey's got that, the ability to just toss out these massive ranged abilities, fall back after a boxing match, and heal himself up with that third ability. Going to be difficult to deal with. Spudio, if he elects to go for that double stack build that we've seen so often from Marty, Transcendence and a Soul Eater, could alleviate some of that.
Johnny's thrown back by the ult by Worst Turtle, but Worst Turtle's got no further follow-ups. Used all of his mana to try and engage on the right side. Doesn't come up with anything. Kha'Zix will walk aggressively right in front of Preds and Hawk, but recognizing he has just enough defense to not have to worry about either of them just yet. Spudio actually gets a nice little pushback to keep Davey out of lane, but Panvich in the 2v1 will be just fine. That Ox form hits the knock-up onto both members of Hex Mambo. He's able to skirt his way back to lane safely.
It's a nice pull from Julio, though, showing that he's real clean on the Hercules, even with only having the one set so far this tournament to play. Something we don't talk about often enough. Some of the first seed curse is that you just don't get a chance to warm up, whereas the Wargs have at least got that one previous set. Regardless, it's not affected Julio, because I believe he hasn't even missed an ability yet. Not on camera, at least. And so, Hex Mambo is still in a decent position, and we're able to defend their own blue buff against the efforts of Panvich. I like what the idea behind Panvich's playstyle, though. Sun Wukong being top 2 in Soul Lane as far as safety is concerned. I think of Sun Wukong and Jormungandr allows you to go for these aggressive plays, position aggressively, force rotations from Johnny, try and invade that blue buff, just be as annoying as possible and pull resources away from Hex Mambo. All the while, that allows Worst Turtle to do whatever it is that he wants to do on map without having to concern himself with aggression from Johnny elsewhere, because he's so busy defending his blue buff, so potential for invades on the left-hand side or ganks in mid. So long as Panvich has got someone looking at him, he's doing a good job.
Spudio now seems to have at least hit the point where he can safely clear the wave and not have to worry about any poke from Davey. Throw out that acid rain from long range. Allow just clear out the wave while he can stand far back and away from this Ola run. It lets him at least stay comfortable in lane once more. Early game, was a bit of a woe for him. Goes against the Olorun. Olorun says, okay, well, here's my stem, here's my giant orb, and here's all the mini orbs that I can fire immediately after. Go sit under tower and think about stepping up to me again. Now, a little bit safer over in that duo lane, especially having access to death from above just makes it so difficult now. Even with ultimate from Davey, unless he's able to get that ultimate out early. Feels like it's so hard to kill Spudio alone at this point.
Spudio's not even going to look for boxing matches either. It's the ability-based build as opposed to the double ring on the other side. Beads lost for the Marty. Spudio without a bit of safety for a moment. Will at least return some damage, but that's into support. Pretty low-value target. I wonder now, can you have Orsurl start to make some of those rotations towards the duo lane? It's the only beads down on Hex Mambo, so it's the only clear target.
Kha'Zix maybe seeing if he can fish for a pull, but it's actually a blink by Wargs towards Johnny, and the now 3v1. A silence on the Johnny, has to use the ultimate to get out of there, just narrowly able to get up into the sky for that CC immunity. It gets away from the collapsing of the Niflheim Wargs. Kha'Zix just standing by, not much he could do to up at his teammate at that point. And now walking up to prevent what could have been a Fury pull. It's an ultimate from Sap, and that's going to slam through. I'm a monster. Gets the reset that he's looking for, but Kha'Zix doesn't have any follow-up pushing up to this purple just yet. Spudio now joins the fray. Throws out the Acerate, and ultimate for Kha'Zix pulls two, but it's into the bomb damage in return. Hawk is firing right back, and nowhere for Kha'Zix to go as he's trapped inside the Sanctified Field in a one-for-one trade.
My heart goes out to Kha'Zix because everything looks good execution-wise. Lands the stun, finds the pull, sets up for the E-set kill, double pull on the tail end. Wall placement's good, can't even fall back through the purple buff. The only thing he hadn't taken into account is the positioning of his allies and how far away they really were. The only one remotely in range to play with them was Spudio, and even then, throws out the ultimate, doesn't exactly have enough damage on his own to hit pay dirt on those targets. And so, an example of great placement, great ability pressing, perhaps not the best timing for it. And Kha'Zix falls for his effort. Fortunately for him, though, having killed the support just previously, it's not as if he's going to fall behind.
1-for-1 on the supports. And now maybe a fight around Beacon, as that one's about to spawn in less than 10 seconds, and already a grouping up of a few players from each of the teams, but maybe a bit slower from the Wargs to stack up towards the Beacon. It's already Hex Mambo on the point. Kha'Zix standing by with Sap and Johnny nearby. One bomb will hit Kha'Zix from Hawk, but he's focused on keeping the wave cleared out for the time. A fight could break out. Soul laner Panvich is now here, and that's going to force a retreat from Hex Mambo. Kha'Zix has to swing himself away. And the man advantage for the Wargs means that first Beacon should go their way, just because Julio is not going to leave his lane. He is content with keeping up the farm on the right-hand side. First Beacon goes to the Wargs.
I suppose Julio just doesn't like his odds in that fight. And any team that's got E-set around these Stygian beacons will have a slight advantage. Just control that space, have damage mitigation, healing, a massive no-play zone. Even a rotation from Olorun could make that a miserable experience for Hex Mambo. So the decision from Julio to stick around in the Soul lane makes a bit of sense to me. Doesn't like his odds, doesn't think things can go his way. Instead, will spend his time farming and at least denying Panvich a bit of farm. This puts an entire wave into that tower. That rotation from the Wargs, though, does hit pay dirt more than just the Stygian beacon. Gets the beads off of Sap 7 thanks to that cat form from Panvich. And so, a target now for Worst Turtle. Previously, it was just Spudio, but he's got his beads and ultimate back now. Sir Ket should be able to rotate in towards this Scylla.
Now Hex Mambo with their early couple of kills. One return by Niflheim Wargs. Game sitting about dead even right now. Less than 1,000 gold between the two. Urso gets hit by the Root Crush combo and a Sunder as well, forcing him to jump back over the wall. Preds wants to try and take this green buff, though. Doesn't have nearly the damage to try and do that. Full range Spirit Ball barely does a couple hundred damage to that camp. The Sap will secure that, but walks right into a silence and a stun right after. A couple of bombs already expended. The last one now down by Hawk, and an ultimate from Preds to zone away. He and his mid laner Hawk have to dash themselves back out. Sap still standing by, alive and healthy.
Sap is a wild man. The dash forward, just ridiculous. No regard for his own safety. That's what I like to see from mid laners. Willing to put out some damage. So Sap 7, even without beads, clearly unconcerned. And the Scylla is doing surprising damage already. It's a very fast build. Charon's Coin immediately into Spear of Desolation. We see it on the other side mirrored by Hawk. Gives you so much pen, a little bit of CDR early on. Those crushes, those sickums, massive team fight tools. And there's so much CC on the Hex Mambo draft that, for the most part, I trust SAP7 to be finding priority targets. A pull from Julio, a pull from Kha'Zix, or one of 3 pulls from Kha'Zix could keep things easy.
I do want to point out the tiny little interaction that we saw between Kha'Zix and Hawk in the mid lane where they just kind of stand, waved at each other. Gotta remember that Hawk was a former Hex Mambo player. Now replaced by SAP7 for the new Hex Mambo roster, so having to play against his former team. Knows kind of the play style that Hex Mambo will go for, so some useful information that he can give over now to Niflheim Wargs roster, having played for a full split and having played for a major Masters event as well with Hex Mambo. Should be good information to pass over to his new team.
Should be, but Hex Mambo's never been a team that's tried to trick you. It's never been a team that's got weird play styles. They play for the late game team fight and generally scaling compositions. He said Ultimate shouldn't be able to take that one away and won't. Nice try from Preds, but able to drag it out of range, and Hex Mambo confirmed themselves the first neutral objective of the game. Pyromancer at the 15-minute mark, even further pushing themselves in the lead. This is Hex Mambo's classic MO, this slow death of 1,000 cuts.
Hex Mambo trying to step up, get some extra poke towards Preds. Not going to find much. Sap just a bit off the mark on landing his combo. Panvich all the way back towards the tier 2 tower, got pulled back in. Now Johnny and Julio trying to collapse. That bird form gives him so much mobility. And right into the somersault cloud over the wall. Julio and Johnny will give up chase. Panvich now just a little too far away for Hex Mambo to keep going towards. And so now they'll be grouped up on the left-hand side. Niflheim Wargs setting up aggressively to try and find a pick on Kha'Zix or to Sap. Ultimate does hit worse from worse onto Sap, but Ultimate from Kha'Zix is good. Will land down in place. I'm a monster. Just a little late for the kill, but Johnny's got that anyways. Hex Mambo now at their 3rd of the game.
Hawk needs to figure out the timing. A Maui Ultimate. That's twice now. Just drops both of his relics in midair, goes golden, then dashes forward between the towers. I suppose just resigns himself to death there. If I dash backwards, I hit a giant island. There's no way I make it out of this situation. I'll do as much damage as I can. I'd already used both my relics. I suppose. This feels like a strange sequence once more for the mid laner of the Niflheim Wargs. Hawk now down 0-2, starting to fall behind up against SAP7. Fortunately, because the fights have started to come a bit later into the game, 3-1, 17 minutes in, means that even at 0-2, it's a level, maybe a half level at most, separating Hawk and SAP7. Concerns starting to build up, though, as the builds diverge between these two mid laners. Obsidian Shard in 3rd slot for SAP7 means he is doing damage to everyone. So much penetration already starting to stack up. Likely Polynomicon in next slot, whereas Hawk goes down that Divine Ruin path, wants to get some of the anti-heal rolling, deal with Soul Eater from Spudio or the inherent healing that Julio and Johnny have in kit.
Not just Soul Eater from Spudio, also Soul Eater from Johnny, who
I didn't even
has an insane amount of sustain in his kit already, as you mentioned, between his jump and between the Vampiric Bats. Now just every ability he hits, every auto he lands gives him just that much more. To add on top of that one.
And serrated as well.
Man.
He's healing.
He's healing a lot. Well, maybe a lot less once Hawk gives a little tap his way with a Divine Ruin, but now Johnny versus Worst Turtle up by the enemy green buff. We're starting to get a grouping because the next beacon is short to spawn in. Niflheim Wargs, though, they're in the better position to try and jump right back on top of this one. They've already got Panvich on this side of the map. Julio's just now joining in to try and start breaking out a fight. It's a pull towards Panvich. Half HP already on the Sun Wukong. They'll be able to get into the cloud just in time. SAP7 standing back and standing by, waiting for the chance to strike back once more, but a pickup from Julio just off the mark because the Wind Gust from Preds will make sure to give him that knock of immunity to back away.
Yeah, a lot more presence from Hex Mambo at this beacon. Niflheim Wargs go ahead and fizzle out the fight. It seems like whichever team's able to establish that defensive positioning will tend to be able to hold it here. I'd already said it's so easy for Preds and Davey with those massive no-play zones to hold space, but ESET and Oleron not exactly the best at taking it. And so with Hex Mambo showing up first, are able to confirm themselves the objective. Julio just too tanky to work through and so threatening with that pull that no one wants to step up.
Kha'Zix goes to the ultimate, doesn't find anybody this time, but nearly locks in Davey. I'm a monster just off the mark from Sap this time. A Sanctified Field defensively for Davey. Gives his team an out, but it doesn't help out Preds very much, even with the slows from everything else. The ultimate too late to pop, and instead it's his life bar depleted Spudio comes up with the kill.
Yeah, I like the idea. Hold the ultimate for as long as possible, benefit from the damage mitigation. Also want to benefit from the heal, though, and you don't do that post-mortem. And so, Preds will lose his life here, in spite of playing in the Sanctified Fields. Tossed out incredibly defensively. Looked to me like Davey was real concerned with that dive potential of Hex Mambo, but they had already contented themselves. Sanctified Field finds very little value there. Surprised to see this, though. It was a free pick. Already grouped up around the Gold Fury, Hex Mambo. They want the Pyromancer instead. Rotate across the map, put a second Runic Bomb in pocket.
2 Runic Bombs to the side of Hex Mambo. A couple of towers they can knock down with that, as long as somebody goes by and picks up the Runic Bomb. In fact, one actually used, I believe Kha'Zix actually just walked into Tier 1 and threw out the one he had in pocket to get a little bit of chip damage on the tower, so he'll replace his one with another one to be used for another push. Later on, Kha'Zix, though, taunted back, thrown back to the Wargs, but able to get up into the swing just in time, so Kha'Zix will soak up one ultimate.
Man, Kha'Zix is just so tanky, J-Mac. That Spirit Robe, disruptive. It seems like just about every member of the Niflheim Wargs, when they decide to get aggress, are going to start with CC. Silent stun from ESET, stun from Agni, taunt from Surcat, stun from Panvich, all of which going to proc that Spirit Road passive, giving over additional damage mitigation when affected by CC. Kha'Zix is going to be incredibly difficult to deal with. Fortunately, Maui doesn't exactly have the most damage, so he's not threatening on his own, but even in just being allowed to step forward will create so much space in these team fights. I want to see Hex Mambo start leveraging some of the lead that they've already established. Nearly 4,000. I think it's time to start looking towards that Gold Fury.
I haven't really seen any hints towards Gold Fury. I mean, Niflheim Warg stepped up to try and put pressure on Hex Mambo at their green buff at one point, but that's about the closest that we've seen to any pull around a Gold Fury. It's been 2 Pyromancers so far this game. No other objectives. We saw the Yomi Tanuki do this in one of their matchups, though, where it's just a couple of Pyromancers start out, nobody even bat an eye at the Gold Fury, and then all of a sudden, once about 22 to 25 minutes hit, all of a sudden, all right, Gold Fury is our focus. We're going to make sure to get this, get that gold for ourselves, establish our lead. We haven't seen that just yet from either of these two squads. Would be a great objective for the Wargs if they can manage to get that one, just to bring themselves back in and close up some of that lead that Hex Mambo have.
Would be, but even with such strong confirmation, Circle Protection, one of the best abilities in the game at making sure that your objective goes your way. The deficit that they're playing into, with the difficulty that Davey's running into and just trying to leave his lane, I think they'd be hard-pressed actually moving in towards the Gold Fury itself. Nice attempted gank there from Hawk and Pred, spotted out by Sap7, returning a bit of damage. Keep my eyes on Johnny, hovering the right-hand side, whereas Julio starts to move in towards mid. Wonder now. Soullanders don't lie, really, not in their positioning. If Julio's on the way here, could be a Gold Fury push.
Still have a couple minutes until the beacon's even up. Sun by Hawk towards Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix will be just fine. Not worried about that one bit. It's Johnny on the right side, just making sure to keep eyes on Panvich. Teleport is available. There's nothing that Johnny can do to stop that teleport should Panvich decide to channel that one in his face, which just have to apply damage. Maybe dissuade him from staying too long in the fight, but with Julio nearby, team starting to group around. Sap7 on the way back from base. Gold Fury should be the eye for at least Hex Mambo, but slow to pull the trigger. Niflheim Wargs now able to group themselves around, and they've replaced Panvich on the right side with Worst Turtle instead.
Yeah, junglers and Soullanders trading roles towards the tail end of this match. 23 minutes in, everybody's rapidly approaching level 20, if not already there. Starting to concern themselves with upgrading those starter items. I'm sure Johnny would love to pick up a Bumbus Spear, maybe even a Bumbus Hammer, considering how much sustain he's already got in the build. Maybe he just wants to get a little bit more. Gold Fury defensive positioning established by Hex Mambo. The Niflheim Wargs would have to work their way forward, but won't be walking in head first. They can spot it out from a distance. The only way Hex Mambo are going to force the Wargs forward is by actually pulling the Gold Fury and generating a bit of threat. It seems unwilling to do so.
Jungler's just going to have some fun over on the right side of the map while everybody else groups themselves up over on left, around the Fury, now towards Beacon as that one's about to respawn back in. Sap7 hitting that level 20 power spikes. They've been able to upgrade his starter item. So a little bit more CDR afforded to him, but most importantly, that passive of the Pendulum giving him so much extra damage. once these fights really start to kick off. Kha'Zix still standing near level 16 on the Maui as the beacon spawns in just a few seconds. Niflheim Wargs, they've already got the position for it, but we've seen multiple times now, first team on the scene is usually the one that ends up losing out on this beacon. Mambo might just give up beacon, instead go for the Gold Fury. Panvich has surely spotted this one out. It's just Julio standing by the beacon. He knows that there's a couple players away. The Hex Mambo get the Gold Fury. They might just get the beacon too.
Yeah, have your cake and eat it as well. Will Hex Mambo. Hawk, Preds nearby, Panvich too, but Davy's not rotating, and Worst Turtle is still in the Soul lane. Clean wins for Hex Mambo, taking both objectives on the left-hand side. And why not go for a third? Pyromancer pulled out.
Pyromancer, uncontested.
Okay.
Easy 1-2 combo there from Sap. Davy's going to stick to the left side of the map, so...
Why stop? Get fire.
Gold Fury, Stygian Beacon, Pyromancer, everything for Hex Mambo. 4-1 in the kills. Haven't really seen any actual skirmishes just yet. In the last, I would say, 10 minutes of the game, haven't really seen any teams fighting that much. Niflheim Wargs, they're starting to slowly fall behind to Hex Mambo. You're calling for Fire Giant. Well, they're not actually doing it because they're hunters on the left side of the map. Hex Mambo starting to get some ward control around that Fire Giant pit.
I think they could do it, J-Mac. I mean, the lead is staggering. 6,000 gold in favor of Hex Mambo. Set up some vision. Julio's unkillable. Kha'Zix is unkillable. DPS might be a bit lacking, but if you get Johnny and Spudio on it at the same time, feels like they should be able to deal with that Fire Giant in a relatively timely manner. Instead, would like to hover the center of the map, be there for the meeting of the Titans. Hex Mambo should be able to make contact first. You don't have to go for the fire if you've already got a Titan taking up tower for you. Maybe siege through mid first.
Worst Turtle late on the scene. The join and the Titan clashing in mid. Kha'Zix will lead a bit of poke from the combo of the Wargs, and now Worst Turtle moves in. Misses the taunt on a 1, but does hit Julio. One Titan down, bomb stun onto just Julio. The Titan will now walk into the mid tier 1 tower, get a few swings before it goes down. But still a strong grouping by Hex Mambo. Johnny breaks himself away from the pack. Same as Worst Turtle. Seems the junglers don't really want anything to do with this fight happening in mid just yet.
No, they're going to wait for some of those resources to get expended first. Worst Turtle wants some ultimates to go down so that he can all-in engage, or Johnny would love for Davey to start stepping up a little bit further so that he can jump onto his clear target with no opportunities arising for either. It'll be a staring contest in the center of the map. Do you want to go back to base? Do you want to spend your gold? What is it? It's going to be initiation.
Worst Turtle wants to start the fight with Kha'Zix. He'll swing back right into a sanctified field. Kha'Zix, the first casualty of the fight. And a boulder thrown by Julio is not going to get as much value. Sap 7 on the run from the Sun Wukong. Panvich chasing him under that tower. It's the clone keeping them distracted. The Niflheim Wargs him up with the only kill of the fight and beeline it towards the Fire Giant.
Yeah, Kha'Zix incredibly tanky, but not tanky enough to deal with all 5 members of the Wargs staring at him with time dilated at the same time. The Wargs, with their first opportunity of the game, immediately pull a Fire Giant.
Julio, though, wrapping around the backside of the pit. I'm not sure any of the Wargs have spotted this one out. He's just going to leisurely stroll right through the pit and push 2 immediately into the damage. Sap 7 not quite with the kill. Davey nearly down, but one's traded out. As Johnny goes down, Kha'Zix still on respawn. Sap 7 only barely alive, but Panvich knocks him away. Tiger Sun lands onto Julio, but the Panvich gets slowed down by that Midgardian male. It's Spudio, who will have to fight up against potentially 3. Gets slammed by the damage of Hawk. Jukes out the damage from Preds, but is still fighting back. Missed the Acid Rain. One more auto. The dot from it. No, it'll need to be an ultimate to secure the kill.
Can now Spudio make it out alive. Hawk's on the chase. Hover near a wall is dangerous, but Kha'Zix on respawn. We join his team soon. Stun connects. Damage not quite there. Well-placed Aegis from Spudio. Should maintain his life.
Spudio jukes away. Oh, the root just off the mark from locking down Panvich. Does have the Acid Rain, but Panvich just a little too far. Kha'Zix wants to grab this kill, will swing into Hawk, but just misses the stun because the dash is back up for the Agni. Now with Julio rejoining the fray once more, should be the end of the chase for Hex Mambo, the end of the push for Niflheim Wargs.
Let's talk about Davey for a moment, J-Mac, because the Oleron play in that last team fight, picturesque. The ultimate placement, perfect. The auto attacks all there. Stands his ground up against Johnny. I believe Johnny rotating in at around 100% HP and starts the fight with a 10% HP Davey. Davey's got lifesteal, way more attack speed, and can crit though, and so able to turn around the kill on a Johnny. Had the Camazotz just gone into the air, there's no way Davey survives that experience. There's no way Davey finds that kill. So a slightly greedy play from Johnny to hold on to his ultimate. At the end of the day, it doesn't cost him too much. Hex Mambo were already so far ahead going into that fight, and just trading out nearly evenly, able to maintain that lead. No objectives go down in the meanwhile, and so the game maintains the exact same state as it was previously. The status quo continues. Pyromancer for the Wargs, though. That'd be an aberration from the space we've had established so far.
Pyro to the Wargs. Gold still for Hex Mambo. Though as we start approaching the late game, that gold meaning less and less for these two teams. Worst turtle way too far forward. Johnny, credit for the kill, but the whole team joining in to collapse in on the Circuit, just standing a little too far out of position. And now it's the Hex Mambo who can charge into the backline, and Niflheim Wargs ultimate will pull beads away from Preds, but Julio is right to the backline himself. Kha'Zix still charging up, but a triple Spirit Ball from Preds may have just stopped the chase in its tracks. Hex Mambo stopped cleanly by the support of Niflheim Wargs, but that's not going to stop Johnny. He is the lone agent of this squad up into the sky to get away from Panvich.
That's unfortunate for Johnny. That bat out of hell is such an important tool at dealing with Davey. Having it lost early just for safety means that Hex Mambo will likely hit the brakes on their aggression. Would have loved to have seen them group up, pull a Fire Giant, try and force the Wargs to take a fight while they're off balance, still waiting 10 seconds on Worst Turtle's respawn. Now, maybe have to wait and be a bit more patient. So the Wargs reset themselves, their Tier 1 tower, or the remnants of a Tier 1 tower. Only about 10% HP left on the structure. But instead, Hex Mambo will pull the Fire Giant. This is odd timing. Worst Turtle already back on the right side of the map.
Spudio going to walk out of the pit, though, because Julio has left it. Julio gets to pick up onto one, gets the push onto Preds. Root in place, Crush is good, Boulder off the mark, and now it's Julio in danger, able to walk away, but Sanctified Field slows him down, and a monster slams into two, and immediately makes him think twice about it, but Worst Turtle has joined the fray once more, finds an ultimate onto one and a dash to get himself out. A scattered team fight between both of these squads, but Niflheim Wargs come up on the worst end, so many of their members sitting around half HP.
And they lost out on so many of their team fight tools. Surcat ultimate's your initiation, Pred's ultimate's your confirmation, and Davey's ultimate is your team fight. The Niflheim Warriors have no leg in this race.
Oh no, now they don't even have Preds. He walks up, gets picked up by Julio, and thrown right back to the rest of Hex Mambo. Fire Giant now, half HP. Davey is on his way, but he doesn't have ultimate. Hawk has got a couple of bombs available to him. Pull from Kha'Zix, blocks off one escape path for Davey, but Kha'Zix taking a lot of damage to the Fire Giant. He's got to back out. Spudio can't tank it. And it's Johnny sitting inside the pit by himself. He's got to bounce out. Fire Giant reset by Hex Mambo.
With I'm a Monster down off SAP 7, who had used it previously to stop the onslaught of Davey. Confirmation similarly lacking for Hex Mambo. Still had a few runic bombs in pocket, I believe. 2 runic bombs. So 2,000 true damage. I mean, the best Agni can really do, I believe, is around 600 damage with that bomb. So it's not the easiest thing on the planet, but had Hex Mambo decided, could have waited coin toss on that Fire Giant. Instead, reset, get their resources back, get their HP and mana back. It could do the exact same thing once more. Pool fire, force a fight while the Niflheim Wargs are scattered around the map. This time, though, the Wargs have got their ultimates back, too. That time is shared between these two teams, and when I look at the relics, it might just be the Wargs in advantage.
Kha'Zix stunned, but he lands right on top of Panvich, who's got to go up into the somersault cloud. Will be able to regen some of his HP, gets a shield on landing. Will bird form away. Teleport available, though, to Panvich. He can get right back in this fight. Hex Mambo once again will pull the Fire Giant 3 from the Warg standing by with Panvich on the way with that teleport. Will it be a fight to break out inside the pit or a fight that will happen just outside of it? Once more reset by Hex Mambo, but it's Julio by himself.
Sheesh.
The man who's normally so difficult to kill. The Niflheim Wargs make it look easy, and maybe a pick on a Spudio to follow after, but no, it's SAP 7's combo that not only saves Spudio's life, but can now reset for a pick on a Davey.
Lord.
I'm a monster. Connects with the carry, and now it's Preds in danger. He's slammed by one. Who cares about his shield? Who cares about your health bar? It is all SAP 7. Double kill for the mid laner.
Man, when these teams see their opportunities to strike, they take it quickly. The entirety of the Niflheim Wargs drop their entire kits into Julio. Congratulations, he's dead, but at what cost? You lose out on the duo lane, support and ADC. What was a Fire Giant defense previously, now much harder to do.
Fire Giant Still under fire from the Hex Mambo. Who's going to secure it? It hasn't been reset just yet. Johnny will go ahead and grab that, but Spudio's lost his life for it. And now Kha'Zix could lose it out as a double taunt in by Worst Turtle. Gets the ultimate on a Sap 7 and thrown back to Panvitz. Now it's a double for the solo laner, but Johnny at least takes one for the tribulations of his team, I should say. Hex Mambo, only 2 players with Fire Giant buff.
I didn't even realize Johnny had gone towards even more sustain and build. Bloodforge goes up into the air, finds his last hit, spawns that HP shield. I'm thinking to myself, wow, it is really hard to kill this Camazotz unless you affect him by a CC. If his beads are down, he's not exactly tanky and off-tank with all that sustain, and even then, Divine Ruin, Pestilence, both going to put some work in there. But Fire Giant added onto the list, a little bit more HP to play with. It'll be difficult for Hex Mambo to start their siege with only the 2 fires, but have Johnny act as a solo agent, drag out the fight as long as you want, wherever else you decide to push, be it left or right. All of a sudden, a war of attrition going to heavily favor the jungler battle for Hex Mambo. I'd love to see a fight between Worst Turtle and Johnny. Worst Turtle uniquely suited at dealing with all this sustain, having the 100% in his ultimate, but even then, for some reason, if he doesn't secure that kill, Johnny's going to back up to 1 camp, hit it with Vampiric Bats and 1 auto attack, and just be full HP.
Yeah, Johnny's taking effectively no damage from this Pyromancer. Able to soul that one out and still be at full HP by the time it's done. Immense amount of sustain on this Camazotz. What's that? 3 items that give him lifesteal plus his own in-kit sustain between
plus passive.
Between passive, jump, bats that he can throw out. Man, you need anti-heal to fight against Johnny, because if you don't, he is just going to sustain
healing,
every bit of damage that that's going to be thrown at him.
Yeah, very difficult to win a poke battle up against this Camazotz, but poke battles have been one of the strengths of the Niflheim Wargs so far. That Agni Hawk been doing a whole lot of damage throughout this game, nearly at the top of the damage charts, if not currently there. But with all that said, he's beating out his opponent by 10,000, but I'd argue Sap 7 having a phenomenal game himself. His ultimate placements, the crushes, all been there. Just doesn't have his cooldowns nearly as often as his enemy.
It's one of those cases of 32,000 in poke damage versus 22,000 in kill damage for Hex Mambo's mid. Julio eats a lot by walking up into the fountain, or I should say by into the Phoenix. Actually goes for the Infused Sigil, so takes a couple of shots from abilities and then blows up into some area damage around him compared to just getting the extra mitigation from the opposite end. It's worked out a little bit for Julio, but maybe doesn't feel as tanky as he would hope going into some of these fights. We saw what happened to him the last time he walked up and saw 4 people. He died. It was not a fun time for him, but now surrounded by the rest of his team might make it a little bit easier for him.
Sap 7 loses out on the Aegis over the wall there. Good bit of poke from Hawk just hovering near those doors. Not only stopping the tanks from walking forward, but keeping those backliners guessing as well. Hex Mambo, it'd be difficult to work your way in towards this composition. It's a very strong defense draft from the Wargs. Circle protection, don't walk into my base.
Pull from Kha'Zix, not going to find anyone because it's Preds. Goes into Wing Guts to keep himself up. Worst Turtle versus Johnny. Johnny doesn't have any lifesteal. That's one way to deal with all the sustain of the Camazotz, is just to simply take it away with 1 ult from Worst Turtle. Johnny goes into the sky, forced to dash himself away, but with how much lifesteal he has, well, he was at a 1/4 HP, and now he's already back to 3/4.
And he's going to hit a blue buff, and we're back to full HP before you can even bat an eye.
You weren't even exaggerating. It just happened.
Yep, it'll happen just like that every single time. Has great damage against these jungle monsters and jungle bosses, thanks to Bumba's Spear at that. So, Johnny could almost just be the solo agent jungler full map style. Usually around Fire Giant Dance, it's 4 people around the fire, 1 jungler just pushing down mid. You could have Johnny just solo a Gold Fury, or even solo a Pyromancer, or go push down some of these structures and play around all that healing.
Take on to Julio would be great for the Wargs, but just a little too quick. Beads available to the Hercules. And Julio is able to walk away. Not going to pick him off that easy. Not this time for the Niflheim Wargs. But with all 5 of them going for that commitment, got to have some recognition that all of them may have just backed. There's no Fire Giant available, so nothing, unfortunately, that Hex Mambo can do, but maybe reestablish some wards, but none in pocket for Hex Mambo, so it's just Hex Mambo walking around to the jungle, seeing if they can find anybody.
I'm looking at Worst Turtle's build. It's actually interesting. Bumba's Hammer, you would think, would have anti-synergy with Serket. If she wants to play around her passive, you'd want to hit all your abilities, then go for the auto attack. Instead, Bumba's Hammer generally benefits from ability auto, so you get full value from its passive as well as resetting your cooldown. So curious to see how Worst Turtle elects to play around this one. It's similar to the reasoning behind Hydra's Lament and not picking it up on Serket. So maybe an avant-garde build here from Worst Turtle. Should be able to match some of that sustain, though. If you're worried about wars of attrition, if you want to fight against Johnny, Bumba's Hammer is one way to do it.
Oh, Julio thrown into the Sanctified Field. There's nowhere for him to go. That's an easy way to find a kill onto Hercules. But look at Johnny chasing down Panvich, sustaining through any bit of damage thrown his way. But he misses out on the bats. He's silenced out. He can't even get to the sky. The CC combo too much. But unfortunately, for Niflheim Wargs, they trade out Worst Turtle to get that pick. Tries to take down Kha'Zix, but turned around. And now Preds. Can he find the Spirit Ball on the sap? He does, but there's no follow-up from the rest of the squad. The Wargs a little too far away.
Massive tunnel vision there from Johnny, chasing out a kill onto a tank who had still had his ultimate. So best case scenario, you force the Somersault Cloud. Curious. Maybe overconfident in his damage output. Speaking of overconfident, could be Kha'Zix stepping forward here. It's a good deal of poke trying to defend that Pyromancer, but comes up empty, and it's Niflheim Wargs who grab the neutral objective for themselves. 2 bombs in pocket for Preds. No wards to pick up, but 2,000 true damage in a moment's notice. It's maybe the first time we've seen the Niflheim Wargs in the driver's seat. I'd like to see them keep pushing this lead. It's still 2 dead for a while longer. Kha'Zix has to go back to base. 2 low HP to stick around. If you can't do fire, maybe look towards the Fury?
Kha'Zix swings away before the last bomb connects. Not sure if that bomb would have been kill, but certainly puts him right at range of anything to take him out. Fire Giant started by the Niflheim Wargs. Panvich trying to play zone. Missed combo by Sap7. Throws out the Crush, but it hits the Fire Giant. That's helping the Wargs do exactly what they want to do. Go for fire. When now it's Sanctified Field, the boulder rolls through. And ultimate from Preds. Going to make this hard to steal away. The Niflheim Wargs confirm fire, but can they get out of the fight? Panvich makes it up into the sky in time. But are all of his options now cut off? As soon as he lands, doesn't get the root. Slow is there from Johnny as soon as the bird fades away, but Panvich may just be out of this final as Kha'Zix is willing to commit an ultimate to go for this one. Might not need it. Slow plus a hook will knock him down.
Julio on the other side, distracting Niflheim Wargs' 4-man core. That's dash from Agni, and Kha'Zix is nearby.
Kha'Zix tries to go for the ultimate. Hawk's got the beads timing this time. Not going to be yanked back by the Maui, but it's still Hex Mambo in the driver's seat as they push into the Phoenix. Julio soaking up a couple of shots, walks right back in, but misses the knockup after. Everybody's starting to take some poke on the side of Hex Mambo. But remember, it's Niflheim Wargs who just got Fire Giant. 4 of them still sitting with the buff around their waist.
Yeah, the issue Hex Mambo has run into in the team fight is that nobody wants to deal with Davey. It seems like they are just very happy to fight everyone besides the Oleron. Drag him around the map, try and ignore him, maybe use your mobility. Oleron, very difficult for him to chase out some of these engagements, but he hasn't had to. If you're diving on everybody else, he'll just sink autos and use his damage as peel, and has done so very well in the last few engagements. 5-2-1 for the Oleron. Davey piecing together a very strong game here. J-Mac, I want you to keep your eyes on the relic timers for Davey, because I've been watching them for the last 4 or 5 minutes, and they haven't gone on cooldown in a good long while. There are phenomenal answers in draft for Hex Mambo to look at this Oleron. Now, we've already talked about Kamazotz and how good he is at just blink, vampiric bats, go up in the air, and all of a sudden Davey's a non-factor. Spudio has that exact same play available to him. You just have the 2 of them, connect those ultimates, and all of a sudden, barring an Aegis, Davey doesn't really have anything he can do about it.
Julio walks up and now walks back. It's a decent heal. Maybe not as much as he was hoping for up against the Wargs. Worst Turtle trying to loot back around, but it's Tier 1 and Tier 2. Can't even believe there was a Tier 1 tower still standing on the map at this point of the game. As we approach 44 minutes, Preds will drop an ultimate in the middle of the Phoenix. Pull from Kha'Zix doesn't come up with anything this time through. Phoenix still stands for only a moment. And now it's a chase in by Kha'Zix. He finds the stun onto Preds. I'm a monster. Doesn't do quite enough damage for the reset, and Johnny will chase out, but he doesn't find the kill. Instead, it's Davey taking down Julio, and Johnny on the run. Spudio in the sky gets some return fire back to the Wargs, but the Wargs are healthy enough they can potentially just reset for this Phoenix once more.
Man, the tanks on the Wargs are doing so much. They're just taking the attention of Hex Mambo. Every single time it's Preds walking out at 10% or Panvich doing the same. And once more, it's Davey just doing whatever he wants.
Davey walks in, takes down the Phoenix. Panvich can open the button, walk out the door, and head over towards left side. Tier 2 tower still standing over there. Tier 1 actually still up in right lane at this point through. Again, surprised that we're 45 minutes in a game and a Tier 1 is even still a thought on anybody's mind at this point. Or even still standing. Niflheim Wargs, though, grouped up. The heals, the sustain coming from Davey are allowing his team to keep going through. Panvich and Preds both drop ultimates and both continue their dive. Spirit Ball hits Kha'Zix, and he only pulls back Worst Turtle with the ultimate. As the Phoenix falls down, the Worst Turtle gets his pick onto Spudio, but immediately has to jump back out. The Niflheim Wargs on a quick escape out.
2 birds down and a clear escape path for them. Just need to not get caught on Hex Mambo's chase here. Or perhaps it's a trap they're springing themselves. Turnaround damage. Nice into Kha'Zix, but not enough to send him to the grayscale. The Niflheim Wargs keep Hex Mambo guessing. They're walking into no man's land. No wards here on the left-hand side. So much of the game has been centered on the right. It's been neglected here as far as vision is concerned. But Sap7 doesn't seem concerned. Another dash forward. This Scylla just has no concern for himself. Will not go punish this time. And it's the Niflheim Wargs, who had been on defense for, 30 minutes in a row. Just trying their best to mitigate loss or prevent objectives from going down. For the first time, finally getting aggressive. And they knock down 2 birds quickly. Clean play to the Wargs, biding their time.
So 2 Phoenixes down, one being the most critical when going for your next Fire Giant. That left side Phoenix taken just before the retreat, as well as mid-bird taken out at the beginning of that fight. Hex Mambo now on a timer. They pushed up the waves pretty far and left, so it'll be a moment before that one can get to threatening the base of Hex Mambo, but it's always a timer. The longer you stand around and wait for a Fire Giant, the longer that you bide your time around the objective, trying to go for that pick, trying to wait for that opportunity to take an objective, the faster those minions start to creep in on your base. And because they're fire minions, it does not take them very long to start melting through.
Yeah, the Niflheim Wargs now with evidence around that last Fire Giant that, given the opportunity, they've got the confirmation thanks to Circle Protection and the efforts of Hawk, might just be willing to start grouping up around the largest neutral objective, force Hex Mambo to dedicate some members to the right side of the map. And as you said, if that's the case, we'll start to passively lose out elsewhere, mid and left. Enhanced minion waves starting to work their way forward. Hex Mambo, if they want to fight around fire, it's going to have to be a fast one. You got to make it happen quickly.
You have teleport for Julio if you need to send somebody away, but Julio's more concerned with W King forward, seeing if he can find a pick on anybody, but not going to do so. He and Kha'Zix come up empty-handed. Julio forced back to base because it's a double fire wave that's now about to creep its way into the Titan. Stopped by a single minion wave, but that's going to avert the attention at least from Julio for the time being. Like I said, though, with teleport, he'll be able to jump back in, but is that time enough? Kha'Zix CC chain. I'm a monster. Slams through Davey. Only a quarter HP. Johnny wants to try and take the last sliver of it, but he's forced away. It's another ultimate from Davey defensively to keep them alive. Now Worst Turtle nearly taken down between
Julio.
bats and everything else. Julio joins in. Knock up. Boulder takes him down. Julio still continues to chase. He's not done just yet. Davey now doesn't have any relics of his own, and that could be the call for Julio and Johnny to keep up their chase. Spirit Ball from Preds will keep them alive, but it's a knock-up just to keep the fight going. But Hawk expends his bombs trying to go for Sap and Johnny, and it's a collapse in for Hex Mambo. Julio is soaking up everything just to keep the chase going. He's found Panvich, but that might be the worst target to grab because of how tanky he is.
He also grabbed Hawk there, but Hawk heads up on the beads. Make sure that push doesn't fully channel. He keeps himself alive. Gotta give credit to Sap7, J-Mac. I mean, it just feels like every fight that's coming up, Hex Mambo is off the back of I'm a Monster, just hitting ridiculous targets. He connects with Davey. How often is Ascilla supposed to be the one dealing with Davey? I mean, it's exactly what the doctor's ordered here. Drops him down to 20%. Johnny goes up into the air, forces out that Aegis, as well as the ultimate defensively. Oleron now no longer has value in the team fight, and Hex Mambo start to look a lot more confident in their ability to take that 5-on-5. 10 seconds left on respawn for Worst Turtle. Doesn't take him long to move from base to Fire Giant Pit. But in that time, in this battle that happened on the right-hand side, Hex Mambo regenerate the base. Mid and left Phoenix are back. Only one more enhanced minion wave to deal with. And we're right back to a neutral game state.
Hex Mambo, first around Fire Giant pit. Phoenixes with this final wave by Julio. He'll make sure that they don't have to worry about that threat anymore. That timer that they were so worried about in the previous fight, they're able to ignore it thanks to the efforts of Julio. And in getting that teleport, as soon as he teleports in, finds the double knock-up in the boulder, can now allow Hex Mambo to start this Fire Giant. Nearly half HP on the objective. Julio by himself, taunted back in by Worst Turtle. A couple of bombs and a Spirit Ball is doing some good damage to him. He tries to dash out, does find Worst Turtle, and Sap 7 goes to the Alma Monster. It only is going to hit Preds and basically just tickles the E-set at this point. In the sky is Spudio. A lot of return fire through. Boulder as well, but it's all returned back at Kha'Zix. He swings out as far as he can go. And Sap, he's got to go back to base. Kha'Zix, he's on the run, and Johnny is sent back to base. 75 seconds on respawn.
I think that is perfect evidence for Hex Mambo and the keystone of their team fight. If I'm a Monster isn't hitting someone of priority, it's just not going to look good. Connects with Preds there. You said it tickled him. It just broke the HP shield. That's literally it. That was silence for ultimate out of the mid laner. Aegis off of Hawk as Sap 7 connects Crush there. And Fire Giant reset.
Sap trying to run away, but he's walked right into Worst, so finds the root, finds the Crush, a lot of damage back, but it's ultimate on top of Sap 7. He tries to run as fast as he can, but there's too many abilities to try and dodge. Davey takes him down. Julio goes in to try and find the kill. Kha'Zix swings only for a stun on the 1, while Panvich is keeping Spudio busy. There's just not enough follow-up now for Hex Mambo. They're forced out of this fight, but so are the Wargs, half health or lower on 4 different players.
Let's rewind to the previous skirmish, J-Mac. I saw a Maui ultimate connect with the Nola run, and there just was not enough follow-up. You have to be able to make use of those massive opportunities. The fact that Davey still sits at 7-2-2, 9 out of 12 affected kills, only 2 deaths, nearly at the bottom of the charts as far as deaths are concerned. Panvich, the only one on his team beating him out, and that's Sun Wukong. So we'll put an asterisk next to it. Just crazy. Davey's positioning these engagements has been perfect, making it so difficult for Hex Mambo to hit pay dirt. And now, once more, it's a reset back to that neutral state, but it's relics separating these teams. Davey, no Aegis. Maybe he can shut him down now.
Panvich picked up by Julio. Panvich doesn't care. Fire Giant down to half for the Wargs, but Panvich up in the sky. Worst Turtle finds Spudio with an ultimate and trades out ult for ult. Spudio's got a lot of return fire damage. Gets back to the safety of the tower. Worst Turtle might not want to commit to the dive. It's Fire Giant for Niflheim Wargs, and Johnny is forced to the battle of hell. He's got to get out of the fight while it's just the frontliners on the run. Jukes out the stun, does Julio, and he's able to run back to base. Weakened Phoenixes for Hex Mambo to defend, but Niflheim Wargs once more with enhanced fire.
The Wargs in a very good position. Put another Runic Bomb in pocket, simplify what has already been a simplified siege. Mid and left Phoenix are as healthy as they're going to be, so it should be easy enough, having the ability to ignore those backdoor protections and drop 1,000 true damage at a moment's notice to at least break the base once, and that's all you need to do to expose that Titan. Hex Mambo, their base defense is just not as good as the Niflheim's Wargs were. The no-play zones that the Wargs had made it so difficult for Hex Mambo to step forward. Only thing Hex Mambo can do to stop forward momentum is throw out damage, a crush, maybe for a moment, or threat of pull from Julio, but if it's an all-in initiation, the front line of the Niflheim Wargs have not shied away from it a single time. Silence from Worst Turtle, or excuse me, from Preds, just feels like a death sentence, even when it connects with the tankier targets. Kha'Zix has proven himself to be a little bit squishier than what I had once believed. And so, Niflheim Wargs, advantage on siege, advantage in sustain as far as team-wide sustain is concerned. Olaran will help out with that. It's going to be a very difficult defense for Hex Mambo.
Nearly all relics up for the Wargs at that. Worst Turtle just 20 seconds out on beads, and Preds has dropped his bracer. He doesn't care anymore beyond this. Meanwhile, for Hex Mambo, still no relics for Spudio. 30 seconds plus until those are back. And Niflheim Wargs continue to sink poke damage into the Wargs, into Hex Mambo. Boulder thrown out to try and clear out the wave, but when you're using your ultimate just to clear wave instead of poking these carries, can't feel great for Hex Mambo at this point through. It's a slow bleed to try and get into this Phoenix. But Mambo are doing a great job keeping them out. Kha'Zix goes for the ult, pulls back in Davey, who used the beads and Aegis at the end of it, and an ultimate just to retreat. As Spudio chases out with one, Kha'Zix hits a hook onto another. I'm a Monster, does not hit a priority target at all. And it's now Sap 7 turned back on He'll be forced out as the left side Phoenix crumbles.
That's everything off the Ola run. Might just be enough to stop a continuous siege, but job's done. Left side Bird already off the map. Niflheim Wargs, though, would like to continue moving forward. Keep your eyes on those cooldowns. We're talking 2 minutes left on those defensive relics. Davey, a clear target.
Johnny wants that target. Look how far back he is in the jungle. I don't think any of Niflheim Wargs realize just how far back Johnny is. Davey is peeking through the jungle. Liani gets picked up. Hawk still able to get away. Has his relics. He said ultimate down the back line. Johnny wants his kill on Davey, but the heal is just enough. Jumps on top. Gets the heal. But it's 1-for-1 straight. Now Hawk's in danger. Both of his relics are down. And he's being chased out by the tanks. Julio's just going to W key at him, and one more swing will take out the mid. And now Panvich in the middle of 3. He's got an ultimate to keep himself alive. But now it's a 2-for-2 trade with Niflheim Wargs pushing right back in. Preds, Warsaw, and Panvich still charging forward.
But the Wargs don't have any damage dealers left. Those are 3 tanks that still draw breath. Should be able to knock down this mid Phoenix, but I don't think you can kill the Titan. Not without any of your damage dealers, and the Niflheim Wargs are of like mind. So in a split engagement, a 2-for-2 trade, it's the Niflheim Wargs who come out on top in the end. Left side Bird taken, mid Phoenix desynced a bit and delayed. Only helps them out further. That means that mid Phoenix will be down for the next Fire Giant siege, or Fire Giant dance, I should say. Niflheim Wargs knocking on the door of the base, but Hex Mambo show they've got some fight in them. Johnny in particular finally able to make contact with Davey. Even then, no ultimate for Davey, no beads, no egg. It's still not easy to kill him because circle protection is still there, because the silence HP shield is still there, because Panvich is playing defensive, using that stun and that slow to buy a little bit of time. This king protection style of play for the Niflheim Wargs is just paying itself off.
As long as Davey or Hawk stand near the tricore of the front line of Niflheim Wargs, they should be alive and healthy with their relics. Speaking of relics for Davey, they're back up. Beads and Aegis offline or online. 50 seconds until Hawk gets his back. And Warturtle has his beads back available to him. So, a reset back to around the Fire Giant will likely be the call in the fight as we approach the 57-minute mark, the longest game that we have had this weekend. And now Hex Mambo on the defense. They've lost out on 2 birds. They're heading immediately over to the right side of the map.
Backdoor attempt?
They might not spot that Niflheim Wargs
They've got wards.
are walking to the enemy jungle. But is there any wards down? There is one placed. And I think that may have just been spotted out by Hex Mama. They see Panvich nearby. Can Panvich keep the crowd busy? Will Johnny be able to get out? He gets into the sky in time. But Kha'Zix will at least take away the ball from Warturtle, who throws an ultimate onto Julio. Julio finds a triple push and a triple boulder, but all the fires are turned right back at him with a sanctified field. There's nowhere to go. Kha'Zix, he's all by himself in the back line. He's trying to swing away from 4. Spirit Ball won't connect. Ultimate will only pull back 1. Spudio's being dealt with by Panvich, and Sap is gone. Hawk gets 1 kill. Kha'Zix tries to swing away, but Davey and Preds can just chase him out while Warturtle deals with Spudio. Hawk walking forward with his jungler, and that pushes 2 away.
Can the Niflheim Wargs go for an end attempt here? Preds will distract Kha'Zix. There's no world where Kha'Zix can make it back to base. Only way he goes back is dead. Or by walking the old-fashioned way. Might have enough HP to do that. That's a lot of time spent and would be walking into the members of the Wargs who are starting to move themselves forward.
4 versus 2. Johnny and Spuddy have got to put up a hell of a defense here. No ultimate from Davey, but all bombs for Hawk. Panvich walks forward. Warturtle goes in with the ultimate. Spudio, he's got no relics, no resources left, and no life bar. But Johnny turns around and takes out 1, tries to swing back in. But with Circle of Protection, it might just be a little too much. Johnny takes down 2. Panvich takes out Kha'Zix. And the Niflheim Wargs, in 58.5 minutes, grab game number 1.
That is a true and true Cinderella story that I'm sure I'll see on Reddit later. Proof you should never F6. That game was looking miserable for the Wargs for the first 30 some odd minutes, but by the time they had grabbed their first Fire Giant, first siege goes well, knocks down 2 birds, second siege the exact same thing. And it just felt like it was so much more difficult for Mambo to get onto the priority targets of the Wargs than it was the other way around. Davey, towards the end, was threatened consistently. Those beads and Aegises were on cooldown, the ultimates were used defensively. But at the end of the day, he's still returning damage and doing a ton of it. Whereas when Sap 7 got jumped on, I mean, he just got dealt with.
Sap 7 just didn't have the resources in kit to stay alive in that last engagement, and with it, Hex Mambo fall down to Niflheim Wargs. Now 1 game away from winning out the Gauntlet. Can the Wargs close it in 2? Or will Hex Mambo take us to game 3? We'll find out right after this break. That's right. Thanks to our good friends over at Advanced GG, you can bring the Battleground home to yourself and pick up one of our Shakers branded over for either eShell. We've also got the Godslayer bundle available, all by going over to advanced.gg. And make sure that you use code SMITE. That way you can get 10% off of your order. Pick up either your eShell Shaker, your Godslayer bundle, your Baron's Brew, whatever you want to go alongside with there. Make sure that you go over once more to advanced.gg and use code SMITE to get your 10% discount code off of that. Thank you so much to Advanced GG for joining us in year 10 of SMITE and season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. Game number 1, Mifflin. We nearly get to the 1 hour mark here between the Hex Mambo and the Niflheim Wargs.
Darn it.
It's a very slow-paced early game. I believe it's only 5 or so kills moving to 25 minutes. Then this elongated dance around Fire Giant multiple times. We start cresting 35 to 45 minutes, 45 to 55 minutes, just constant back and forth. One team's able to break the base a couple of times, and that's the Niflheim Wargs, and with those broken base defenses, it's just not enough for Hex Mambo to be able to fight back in. Niflheim Wargs take game 1.
I think adaptations lie in P's and B's, and really just one P and or B. Get rid of the Olarun. That Olarun was just too much to deal with. The Agni damage, of course, also deserves a bit of credit. I really like the performance from Hawk. I thought he was absolutely dominating with some of those long-range stuns or peel, even the willingness to dash aggressively a few times in the early game. Gets him killed, but if a game goes 58 minutes, you could die 20 times in the first 10 minutes, and it wouldn't matter. And so, the Niflheim Wargs, even with hyper-aggressive play throughout the early, find themselves in a very good position come late game. That Olarun just goes unchecked for far too long. Even when those relics were put on cooldown, there was so many resources dedicated to putting them on cooldown that there was nothing left in the tank to actually shut him down. Davey pieces together a phenomenal game over the course of those 58 minutes. Otherwise, I wonder if maybe it's also a bit of build diff. There's a reason we don't often see 4 sustain items built on a single character. That was a whole lot of lifesteal for Johnny. His ultimate was doing very little damage, and maybe that's why Davey also found himself surviving so many of those scenarios. If we were a little bit more ability focused, perhaps Johnny could have been a bit more threatening, especially considering how quickly he did die in those team fights. Doesn't matter how much lifesteal you have if you're not able to use it, and for the most part, he really wasn't.
Yeah, unfortunate for Hex Mambo, just couldn't get to this backline enough to deal with Davey. Sure, you put 4 deaths on the Olarun, but some of those came early. One of them did come through on a late game defense around 48 to 50 minutes in, but it took everything that Hex Mambo had. Johnny's entire kit, commitment from the rest of the squad to jump in there, and also everything in Niflheim Wargs defense to keep him alive. Even with relics and ult down, you still had to fight through. Shielding that Preds was providing, CC that he thrown out there between Silence and Spirit Ball, and Ultimate that gets dropped at his feet. Just so much defense for Niflheim Wargs, and I think you put it best, a king protection style of strategy for the comp.
You see that 73,000 damage.
Yeah, that's gross.
From Hawk. That is nearly double what SAP 7 had did, and 44,000 damage is admirable, by the way. That is something you should aspire to do in your games. Just absolutely trouncing that poke potential from the Agni. Worth noting that SAP 7, when he did apply that damage, it was in 1,000 increments in the late game with I'm a Monster, and usually on some pretty decent targets. A lot of that game rode on the Scylla. I think unrealistic expectations to ask Scylla to be the one dealing with Olarun. The few team fights that did go well, that was the case. I think, though, the more realistic expectation is an Olarun ban. I'm going to keep saying it until it happens, and if it doesn't happen, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, I mean, really, Spudio and Hawk kind of both battling for that top damage spot there. Spudio just barely winning out. It was like 74,000 versus the 73K at that point. Not quite. I was trying to remember. I think the record still stands with Yaman way back, 83,000 damage he was able to do in one game. So not quite the record for top damage, but certainly getting close there. But let's move into game number 2. Picks and bans between Hex Mambo and Niflheim Wargs. Hex Mambo have got to make their adaptations here. Do we see an Olarun ban? Do we see an Olarun first pick from Hex Mambo if that gets left open? Do the Wargs maybe even run the risk of giving an Olarun over? Maybe they ban it themselves if they feel that Hex Mambo are going to leave it open.
I wonder. I'm not so certain that Hex Mambo's got a whole lot of experience on that pick. It seems to me that they've been pretty set in their god pools, at least over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, and Olarun has not been counted amongst those, but also Olarun hasn't really been in the meta until just now. So we'll see how things start to pan out. As of now, Olarun undetected in the ban column. Instead, it's another magical hunter that finds himself there. Freya taken away by the Wargs. Hex Mambo was just keeping us guessing for a moment, though. We all knew it was going to happen. Olarun finally taken away.
Yeah, Jormungandr, Yamoja, and Olarun for Hex Mambo. Niflheim Wargs with Tyr, Freya, and Sun Wukong, surprisingly enough. Taking that one not only away from their soul lane, but also keeping it out of the hands of Julio on the opposite side. Maybe leaving some priority picks open for themselves. Martikaros once more for Hex Mambo. I've got no complaints for what Spudio is able to do when you do 74,000 damage over the course of a game. Got no reason why you wouldn't want to draft the Marty one more time, but now's where maybe some of the new adaptations come through for Hex Mambo. What else do you draft alongside it to maybe try and get to this backline and allow Spudio to be able to do some of this damage?
We'll see. Maybe some dedicated initiators could do well. It felt like a lot of that throughout the early game. It was frontline diff in favor of Hex Mambo. I really loved that Maui. Felt like he was finding priority targets consistently. Maybe some user error on part of the Wargs. I believe it was 3 pulls where Hawk just goes gold in midair, and it's a tough situation to make yourself scarce when that's the case. But something that could start the fight a little bit more consistently and perhaps create space, because that's what I saw from the Wargs. I would say towards the late game frontline diff for the Wargs, just by nature of having 3 frontliners at that. It was a full tank jungle Surcat as opposed to the full lifesteal jungle Camazotz for Hex Mambo. And it seems to me that the Wargs are essentially capable of doing the exact same thing, but this time find themselves with a Heimdall. And we talked about that at the beginning of the set. In the EU SCC, Heimdall just wins often. Everybody wants him. The Wargs got him.
Wargs will draft the EU special of Hunters with Heimdall, but also getting the Agni one more time for their mid laner Hawk. Remember, we just talked about the 74k Spudio damage. Well, right behind him was 73k on the mid laner with this Agni selection. But over on the other end, a small adjustment from Hex Mambo, pulling away from the Maui, and instead going towards a Fafnir. So it's Marty and Herc once again in the top two, but now swapping out that more, call it non-committal style initiation. Fafnir is one you got to get in their face if you want to get the fight started. That hammer, it's got some range to it, but once you hit that dragon form, you want to be in their face constantly.
Yeah, I'm desperately searching my mind palace right now for changes in the most recent patches as to why I'm looking at a Fafnir. Even with this composition, I couldn't tell you why I'm looking at a Fafnir. Generally, it's, okay, double Hunter meta, oh, well, let's get a Fafnir. We got auto attackers that can really make use of Coerce. You've got one auto attacker on this composition, and I would hesitate to call him that. Marty is not exactly an auto attack hunter. That's like a Transcendent Soul Eater crusher for attack speed, maybe a Fail Not. That's about it. A curious selection. It's an aggressive pick. It can jump into that backline. It's got decent ability to stop channeled abilities, so Wing Gust will struggle to channel, but if, and I think it's not even an if, I think with that E-set going to support, unlikely that you really even want to dedicate an ability to stopping her Wing Gust. Late game 30 damage ticks, they don't really do anything.
We'll see if Hex Mambo can bounce back in game number 2, tie up the set, and take us to game 3, or the Wargs going to sweep right through with a 2-0. Let's jump right in to game number 2 between Hex Mambo and Niflheim Wargs. It's J-Mac Mifflin and Doug back once more, bringing the action between our top 2 seeds of the EU SCC. Also, it always just feels like on compositions like this that Fafnirs go against, that it feels that he struggles the hardest. You go up to that transformation, and if that E-set is nearby, it feels like it's almost impossible to escape once you've landed down from that transform.
Yeah, so we'll see if that's going to be the case going forward. I'm surprised to see this. I've never seen a Hex Mambo team get such little votes in the Twitch poll. 28% to the 72 of the Wargs. Maybe a bit of recency bias. You got 58 minutes of watching the Wargs win in the last one. I'm keeping my eyes on Johnny, J-Mac. That was an uncharacteristic performance from him in the previous match. A much slower pace to what we've become accustomed to. Does get things involved around that 9 to 15 minute mark. Johnny really active there. But now on to Thor, a pick that we'd even talked about in that last matchup. Something he's gone towards a few times. Really does have the ability to jump into that back line. Keeps things interesting.
Thor may not be a top pick for Johnny, but it has been a fairly successful one. I think sitting right around that 66, 67% win rate in the games that he has been able to pick those up for. So how will Hex Mambo perform? There's a strong early game from them. They got about a 5,000 gold lead or so within the first 20 minutes of the game. Then weren't able to do much with it beyond there. Niflheim Wargs able to slow bleed this game out to 35, and then that was the first time that we really saw them take the wheel, really put themselves in the driver's seat up against Hex Mambo. And for the next 23 minutes of the game, it was all Niflheim Wargs. So if late game is the call for Niflheim Wargs to go up against Hex Mambo, how do you fare with a composition like this one, having the Cthulhu, having this E-set, it gets kind of your front line alongside with Worst Turtle, assuming he goes for that tank-style build again?
I mean, you've got the same 3-man core. Worst Turtle, Hawk, and Preds reprising their roles here. Differences being, now you've got a standard Hunter with the Heimdall, and then Cthulhu, which has always been a late-game monster in the team fight. Very good in the 5-on-5. Gives over a little bit of team-wide sustain. Massive pillar of CC. Is it going to have similar levels of team fight presence to an Oleron? I'd argue no. But it is similar in execution in that he is biding his time and waiting for that point. So if the Niflheim Wargs so choose to take the pacifist run to the 35-minute mark like we had seen previously, I wouldn't be overly surprised. But I would say they are slightly less favored than they were previously. Whereas if you were to say, look at this draft, what do you think happens in 55 minutes in game 1? I'd say easily over to Niflheim Wargs. Maybe 80% odds. Now they've only got like 65, 70% odds. Boo-hoo for them.
Oh no, you lost 10 to 15% of your odds, but
that sucks, you know.
Still favored them, at least a little bit, for Niflheim Wargs. Hex Mambo, though, feels like they got better tools for defense this time. Last game, it felt like when they went on these siege defenses, you have Marty, he can throw out some decent damage. When I throw a Merlin into the mix, and we always talk about how Merlin is so great on these defenses with such long range available to him. So if it does come at least down to siege defenses, at least here in Game 2, Hex Mambo drafted a little bit more to help themselves out.
Yeah, Merlin, bar none, maybe the best mage on base defense. Just persistent damage on field. Great at clearing out those waves. Great at keeping people back. Has a little bit of CC in that arcane stance too. Just very difficult to work through him once you're on siege. But there are also decent matchup options here. I mean, Agni's got a similar level of range with that rain fire. Might be able to keep Sap 7 at bay in situations like that. Or even just have Worst Turtle, and I think it's fair to assume that he is going to go down in an entirely tank build again. Just have him dive on to that Merlin. Have him make Sap 7 think twice. It's a little bit more difficult for Merlin to play as safe as a Scylla. The dash has less range. You kind of have to stick in close if you want to apply your damage consistently, like in Ice Stance or in Fire Stance. Might just lose your life here.
Ultimate from Worst Turtle, a little bit of fire after, and Worst Turtle will get first blood, but trade out his life immediately after to Sap 7. A nice easy combo from Hawk to set things up. And really it all came from the poke that Hawk could put out there. Starting out the battle as a 1v1 in mid, and just allowing his jungler to come clean up the job.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe Worst Turtle used his leap there. I believe it's a blink forward immediately into the ultimate. If he had used his leap, he's dead to rights. But if he didn't, ultimate dot damage would have likely secured that kill. Could have leapt out, potentially maintained his own life. Regardless, a first blood trade, favorable for the Niflheim Wargs, and keeping Sap 7 down, certainly valuable as well. Giving over that return kill, I'm not so certain. There's some nuance to that conversation. We'll have to see how Hawk and Sap 7 sort of stack up against each other in the next few minutes. Might actually be a slight gold advantage over to Sap 7. Look at gold in hand. Or gold net worth. Thank you very much, Doug. No, they're about even. It's about 200 separate AM. Not too bad.
It's a nice return for Sap getting the shutdown. Maybe the leap used to get to that point of the fight anyways.
Perhaps like just get through the jungle. It might have been.
Could have been. Though we'd have to rewind time to keep track of all the cooldowns of that one and see exactly when it went through. So at the end of the day, 1-for-1 trade. Not the end of the world. Still getting that first blood bounty for Worst Turtle. Expedites his build at least a little bit. Allows him to now get a little bit more active. Actually going for some damage in that first slot. The Jotun's Wrath first item for Worst Turtle.
Same as last time.
But we did see him, if I'm not mistaken, last game sell it once he got to late game to just opt for a full defense build. So I wonder if he'll do the same thing in Game 2.
I think it's pretty likely. The hybrid build loses value. Hybrid builds have lost value just by patches over the last few years, but throughout the early, getting Jotuns for yourself means that you're still putting out decent damage. If you go one damage item in first three, for the first three items, you're essentially going to have at least 80%, maybe 90% damage threshold on these squishier targets. Johnny up to the air, does connect with Worst Turtle, and he is just eviscerated immediately. Johnny loses out on the beads, though, to confirm that kill. Hawk stun, enough to get that off of him. So a 1 for beads trade, Johnny would probably do it again, give the option.
Hawk, just jukes out the hammer from Kha'Zix. That could have been potential beads taken away had that connected, but with no connection means that mid laner will be just fine. And the unfortunate part for Worst Turtle in this position goes for the blink. We saw him use it under the tier 1 tower, which means he doesn't have beads. And this early when you're going damage and no defense, well, Johnny's doing just as much, if not maybe even a little bit more damage. Able to land that full combo up, coupled along with Sap 7 and the rest of the squad. Ultimate by Davey. Now he's got Bifrost. I was about to be worried for a moment. Then I remembered he's a Heimdall. He'll be fine.
That's the safest hunter in the game. Maybe just trying to distract the left-hand side as the rest of the Wargs start to work themselves right. I don't think Johnny has any idea that they're behind him.
Well, Johnny thrown back by an ultimate. And not even a boulder from Julio is going to stop the Wargs from chasing forward. A lot of commitment from Johnny to try and get in there, but nothing left to get out of the fight. Niflheim Wargs will clinch their second kill of the game. Davey again with the Bifrost just to get away from Spudio. Back to the tower he will go. And it's 2 picks now for Niflheim Wargs.
A much more back and forth pace here in Game 2 of this set. The Niflheim Wargs showing some fight back throughout the early, and Hex Mambo struggling to put themselves in a similar position as we had seen in Game 1. Previously it was around 2,000 gold, some odd, around this portion of the game. Good presence from them around those neutral objectives. This time around much more even, and even at times favoring the Wargs. keep my eyes on that jungle experience disparity. It's already fallen twice. Has worse turtle, so that Surcat losing a little bit of time in the jungle. Needs to start farming up soon, getting some of that defense online, whereas Johnny, on the other hand, does go Jotuns in first slot, which is probably why we see him active a bit earlier than we did previously. But still, just a Transcendence fan, Johnny's always loved that item. Seems he's going to be going that way in the second slot. That'll slow down his build a good deal.
Maybe. Slow down some of his momentum. But still active through the early game. 1-1-0 for him, 1-2-1 for Worst Turtle. And a purple buff steal attempt by Hex Mambo, but instead it could just be a pick onto Johnny for the Warg. Johnny throws the hammer, or throws out the wall, I should say, to cut off some options, but now he's got to get out. Gets the hammer just in time to pull himself away from this battle. Niflheim Wargs unable to close out on a kill to the jungler, though. Johnny living through that, probably the best case for him because he didn't even have beads going into that fight.
No, very fortunate that Johnny makes his way out there, perhaps with the help of that meditation. Help me out, Doug. It's grayed out. Can't tell which meditation that is. I believe Cloak of the Ascetic.
Yeah, looks like it.
So a little bit more CDR for everybody, good amount of healing and mana sustain. We'll see if it helps out here, though, as Johnny has made his way back. Worst Turtle dropped low.
He needs a little bit more, but Panvich is there to body block. One more shot from Panvich to Johnny would get the kill, but instead it's Julio who picks off Hawk in the pack line. There was no peel for the mid laner of the Niflheim Wargs, and Julio makes it look easy. Trails his way to the back line and finds a pick for Mambo.
And so many members of Hex Mambo so low, too. 20% on Sap 7, Johnny down to around 10%. And Worst Turtle hovering that right side jungle, but was similarly weakened, and so forced back to base, and it's just Hawk that falls down. Unfortunate pacing for the mid laner. Now starting to fall slightly behind. Sap 7 nursing about a half-level lead. Parity and itemization, though, means that they should be doing similar amounts of damage.
Julio and Panvich are battling for the totem. I think Panvich just barely ekes out on the end of that one. We're going to an ultimate from Julio to try and get that, but now he's down to half HP. As beacons. So about 90 seconds till that first one spawns back in. Sometimes it feels like forever between our gaps to talk about beacon because they happen so fast. They're usually done by about 25, 26 minutes, and then when we get games that go as long as last time, makes it that much easier for Niflheim Wargs. They find a pick on a Julio. That gets them set up for this first beacon, but it's still some time before that one spawns back in. Julio does have a full teleport available to him, so he can join the fray whenever need be.
Man, Panvich has just got the ugliest build I've ever seen. The tier 1, tier 2
tier
into a
3.
Glide Shield. Yep, just not aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it's a little bit of MP5, maybe a little bit of power, some survivability. I wonder if he elects to finish off any of those items.
That's what I do in assault games. Is I buy like my starter and then I buy a tier 2 and a tier 1 if I'm a mage. That way I just get the most value for my gold right away. But
I don't play assault, so that might be the best thing.
Well, that's when you're playing assault and you have the money to do that right then. But like, just finish your items.
Yeah, maybe buy like a Chronos pendant or something. Not Panvich.
I mean, we've seen like the earring start, and you just leave it at that until you're ready to build it out because you get some nice MP5. But like, skipping ethereal stuff.
Yeah, he can go back for it. Maybe just had the gold for Glad Shield on back. I do like that strategy of just pick up the earring for the 15 MP5. Usually we see it on lower pressure gods that will, for the most part, have their blue buff invaded. And that was the standardized answer to Cthulhu that the SPL had come up with when he was in every single game. Haven't seen too much pressure sent his way, though, so has been able to confirm a few of those blue buffs. Okay, he's upgrading the earring. That's new.
But Sap 7 in danger, half HP, flickers back to tower. Johnny taunts it back into the ultimate from Preds, but not enough damage. The meditation from Kha'Zix trying to keep them back up, give them some extra cooldowns. Kha'Zix goes in, stun onto Worst Turtle, but now Julio tries to join the fight as well as Panvich. Beads taken away from Hawk, but with pressure for the Niflheim Wargs, Kha'Zix might not want to stick around much longer, forced to transform with his ultimate, and now the carries are back in to try and provide some damage, but Panvich, he's got ultimate. He's well and healthy to try and kick around this fight. Niflheim Wargs will get first beacon.
Yeah, Panvich. Good trigger discipline there. Holds on to the ultimate, realizes that Hex Mambo aren't exactly really all in on this fight. There was so much poke thrown into Johnny and Sap 7 beforehand. Kha'Zix goes in, but he's alone. So Panvich just hovers nearby and says, look, if they actually come in, I'll descend into madness. Otherwise, I'll be keeping my sanity, and does exactly that. Clean play. Still applying a whole lot of damage throughout that small exchange. Unfortunately, Julio makes the rotation as well. Doesn't get nearly as much accomplished. Rotates in behind the fight. Doesn't find the pull. Is forced to rotate back. Julio previously, in team fights around the beacon that weren't going to go their way, had decided to just stick around in lane and farm up. Would have suited him well there. Now slightly behind the Cthulhu.
Spudio. So we went with the same build style he went last time. Transcendent, Soul Leader. I believe it was Fail Not in the next slot after that one for this Marty. So
Then Crusher.
And Crusher and Heartseeker? I believe so.
Yeah, we're there.
We're almost there. We're nearly halfway there. Hope he's got a prayer to live on.
I was going to do it.
Dang.
I was going to do it. You know, you got it.
You know, I should have let you have that one. We set up the alley-oop for each other, and unfortunately, I just went for the slam dunk.
Hindu told me I sing too much on broadcast anyway, so maybe for the best.
Well, it's because you copyright strike us when you do. You're too good at it.
Pitch perfect. I'm like Charlie Puth. Is that who it is?
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I think I've only seen that movie one time.
Is that a movie?
Pitch Perfect? Pretty sure that was.
Perfect pitch is just a concept. It's like when you can hear things perfectly. And
no, I know that's a concept. There is also a movie called Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, that was Anna Kent. You know what? Let's talk about Smite.
Yes. Let's get out of the realm of what I don't fully know about movie-wise, because like I said, I've seen it once. But I've seen plenty of Smite. We've seen plenty of EU Smite start just like this. Dead even game, 15 minutes in. No gold separating the two teams. Johnny, though, in danger. Has Hammer to get out. Doesn't need to expend a Relic to do so. Sap 7 able to get some return fire back. Scare Worst Turtle away, who is starting to go down his defense tree. Glad Shield, now Magic defense in pocket. Kha'Zix walks up. There's some unfavorable territory. But it's not a whole lot of damage thrown back to him just yet. Still fairly tanky on this Fafnir.
Yeah, not a lot of damage, but still probably annoyed by all that CC that has come in his way. Perhaps a bit of foreshadowing for the rest of this match. Those CC chains that were serving the Niflheim Wargs so well come late game in the previous game. Still, for the most part, available here. One of the primary strengths of ESET. It's a Manicore Spike for Panvich. Good eyes, Doug. But it's a Gold Fury for Hex Mambo if they have their way. Panvich already made the rotation.
Half HP. ESET ultimate down. They're just going to take this one away. It's all for Niflheim Wargs. Said, thanks for doing the hard work, Hex Mambo. And maybe we can find a pick as well. Niflheim Wargs chasing out Sap 7, gets the taunt, gets the dash after. Aegis eats up some of the damage, but the ultimate throws him right back into the waiting arms of the Wargs. They get a pick on a Sap 7. And now for the immediate retreat call, Fury +1. And even with a dunk in by Johnny, Hex Mambo got nothing left in the tank.
You know, Sap 7 dead for so long, so many resources used by Mambo. I'd love to see a Pyromancer pool here. Damage would be slow rolling without the help of Worst Turtle. So perhaps it'll just be pressure in a tier 1 tower of mid. Johnny doesn't have ultimate, so any CC that connects probably make it difficult for him to make his way out of there. Drop that tier 1 tower down to half, and Niflheim Wargs fall back. That Gold Fury has got to be mentally crushing for Hex Mambo, who are burning it so quickly. But just the presence of the Niflheim Wargs forced them back. Mambo don't realize that the Wargs have pulled it themselves, and Circle Protection is the win button around those neutrals. Just grabs it easily. There was nothing Hex Mambo could have done after Circle Protection had been dropped. Niflheim Wargs make it look simple.
Now Niflheim Wargs will grab themselves the first lead of the game, about 1,000 gold up for the Wargs. 1,000 gold at 17 minutes isn't really much of a lead. It's only single tier 1 item split between pretty much the entirety of a squad at that point. Some extra wards in pocket more than anything.
It is a singular balanced blade split between 5 people.
It is a Gem of Fate plus a couple of potions.
Maybe a ward.
900 gold for 10% CDR. It's the one fun fact I know with that. But another fun fact, Pyromancer is all for the Niflheim Wargs, at least if you're a fan of the Wargs. Kha'Zix tries to slow things down with a stun on the Preds, but it will be Pyro for the Wargs. Unable to pick up the Runic Bomb just yet, but with Kha'Zix walking away, Niflheim Wargs will grab that one. Spudio tries to keep up pressure on the left-hand side of the map. Does end up taking away that back camp.
Yeah, Davey sees a lot of space there. Maybe concerned, knowing that the rest of his team's on the right-hand side, perhaps. There'd be a rotation from Johnny, who was actually in left side jungle there with his ultimate. So backs himself up very safely, confirms his own purple buff, and says, look, you can play for pressure, you can grab my back camps at the end of the day. As long as I don't die, that is a massive win for myself and the team. And so the Wargs grab Pyromancer and reset once more. Feels like we're just playing into the Wargs' pace right now. fallen right back in where we were in game 1. Things have slowed down severely, but this time around, it's by the Wargs deciding to play slow. They've got the lead solidly. Surely the next team fight does erupt around this Stygian beacon. Considering how present Panvich has been on the left side of the map so far this game, I'd be surprised if he doesn't show up there.
Hex Mambo and Spudio hasn't been able to get active in any of the fights. Really none of the Hunters have done a whole lot through this early game as far as putting pressure around this beacon. Set to respawn here in just a second. Worst Turtle first on the scene for his team, but first one out as well. Half HP nearly on the Circuit. That silence though from Preds, the shields it's provided to his team, is allowing them to keep in this fight. Julio may have stepped too far forward. Ultimate gets the beads away from him, but it's the beacon pressure for Hex Mambo. Davies a little bit late on his rotation. Spudio's already here on the scene, and Ultimate from Panvich to try and scare Hex Mambo back. And they may just do that with Julio so low. They're lacking a little bit of that front line to stick around.
Yeah, Panvich doesn't have too much more time left on this Descent of Madness as Preds completely isolated. Circle protection, is it enough?
He's going to get some heal back. It's just enough to stay alive. The acid rain and the death from above. Spudio gets one pick for himself, but Worst Turtle's going to try and chain this one back. Julio sent through the realms and right into the tower, but Hawk is traded out. It's a double kill for Spudio, and now Davey forced to Aegis away. Worst Turtle, he's going to keep it going. Double taunt in and some big damage. Take down Kha'Zix before he trades his life with Johnny, who picks up the third kill of the fight for Hex Mambo.
Not a great trade there for Worst Turtle. Support for himself. Kha'Zix, I'm sure, happy to take that one, especially considering the bounty that was on Worst Turtle at that point. And so, the Niflheim Wargs stick around, get involved around that beacon a little bit too early for my liking. Worst Turtle dropped to around 60% HP, forced to fall back. Panvich dropped to about half HP before he drops into the ultimate. All of it because they decided to aggress onto Julio, who really wanted it to happen, was standing on the enemy tower line for a reason. Circuit ultimate dropped on him, I believe all 3 bombs from Hawk, which resustains slowly as the rest of his team starts to cap out on that beacon. The Wargs split up on the fight, lose on the fight as well. Hex Mambo showing that they're very capable of playing from behind, even if they don't get too much practice at it.
Hex Mambo, not a team known for losing too much, especially against their SCC counterparts. Still one of the more dominant teams that the SCC has had. Even thinking some of the old days when you had, was it Elysium that Adapting was on at one point, you had the Belt Slap roster at another point, and then it seems to have meshed itself into what now exists of Hex Mambo and its multiple iterations. But still, down a game to Niflheim Wargs, need this win to keep their chances alive for a Game 3 and try and win out this set. Johnny doing his best to try and get some pressure to Davey. We saw the Hunters finally get active over towards mid lane. It worked out really well for Hex Mambo. Spudio picking up a double kill and an assist to take down Worst Turtle. And now going over to the Primal Fury. Preds has just now spotted this, but he's the only one to step forward. He might not want to step forward. Wall keeps him away for a moment. Hex Mambo, they wanted the Fury last time. They're going to go uncontested this time.
Yeah, Preds shows up, eats stun, drops beads, and says, well, that's the last I've got to say about this Fury, and Hex Mambo will confirm it for themselves. They only briefly got to experience what it's like to play from behind, now back in the driver's seat. Looking towards the Pyromancer. An inverse, a mirror of what we had seen earlier. Niflheim Wargs grabs so much uncontested. Now it's Hex Mambo's turn, and the Pyromancer goes the way of the Fury. Runic Bomb now in pocket of Kha'Zix. 1,000 true damage wherever he decides to throw it. Hex Mambo doing a great job turning things around. Maybe an opportunity now for Worst Turtle on the left-hand side. But with Relics still up and Ultimate available for Spudio, not a whole lot he could do here.
Beads from Spudio. Quick plays there by Worst Turtle. Try and punish the Hunter of Hex Mambo for stepping out of Tier 1 tower, but only gets the beads this time, so beads for Blink, says Worst Turtle. Doesn't even try and use the ultimate either at this point through. So Niflheim Wargs, even after losing their fight in mid, even after missing out on a couple of objectives, still have some fight in them here 22.5 minutes in. Hex Mambo really taking the pace of this game slow. I mean, it's a little bit faster than game number 1. We were sitting at, I think, 3-1 about this point last time. Now 6-5, so
nearly double.
Effectively tripled nearly.
3-1-4
4
at
you're
12.
Right. Yeah, we're
Man,
nearly
you were
tripled.
So much better at math than me.
Man. And yet here I am. Casting Smite.
Right here with me, bud.
Right here next to you. The Hex Mambo. They gotta get something going for themselves. Again, can't just win one fight. Not this early in the game and then win. Gotta keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and if the previous match is any indicator, it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fights. It'll be 10 to 15 for either side can finally start to move themselves into that Titan room. Worst Turtle takes a bit of poke here, but that's a dash forward from Johnny, who loses his beads. It's a good trade for Worst Turtle. Half HP for a relic.
Panvich pushed back by Julio, but tanky enough to where he doesn't really care about just the combo from Julio. Kha'Zix trying to be annoying in the enemy jungle. Does get stunned out by Hawk. Worst Turtle standing around the corner. Will grab a taunt towards just Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix able to provide a nice shield thanks to his starter item to his other teammates, but not quite so lucky to get that shield for himself should he be hit by those CCs, so needs to be careful when he's walking around the jungle by himself.
Fortunately, though, Kha'Zix on Fafnir, one of the safer Guardians, has access to Aegis inherently in the kit in that Draconic transformation, as well as the longest leap in the game, similarly within the Draconic transformation. Still a relatively long leap when he's in Dwarf stance, but absolutely one of the safer Guardians and should be allowed to play as aggressive as he so chooses. Not much to aggress over as of right now, though, J-Mac. Maybe the beacon in a moment, but otherwise, the majority of Tier 1 towers already dealt with by Hex Mambo. All of them, excuse me. Only Tier 2s remaining. No neutral objectives up for a minute either. Just got to spin your wheels and farm. See if you can hit any significant power spikes. Power spikes hit already, though. Pridwin finished up for Julio. The glyph upgraded as well. He's allowed to stick around in these fights for a good long while. And Johnny, showing that it is not a Camazotz exclusive. Just likes to pick up sustain. Finished up a little bit more lifesteal in his build. I believe Bloodforge and Serrated Edge. Allows him to deal a good amount of damage. And if he's auto-attacking, Thor's probably already winning, but it would be even harder to shut him down.
It's going to be difficult to knock down Johnny, but Johnny's just got so much damage in kit. So much damage from his items that he's built up. Beacon has been captured by Hex Mambo, so I believe 2 and 1 at the end of the day here. 2 for Mambo, 1 for Wargs, and Titans will surge up the left side of the map. We've been seeing a lot of mid-Titans over the course of this weekend.
He's squishy.
But the unfortunate trade-off for Johnny, you build a whole lot of damage, you don't got much for defense, and he experiences that firsthand with no beads. 1 stun is all that's needed for Wargs to knock him down.
But what you didn't see, J-Mac, is what would have happened if he landed an auto attack. All that lifesteal would have done him some good. Unfortunately for him, too far away and knocked down. Great pick by Hawk. So the Primal Fury respawns as well. Pulled out and dropped low. Should be traded out on the other side. Pyromancer confirmed by Hex Mambo as the Wargs knock down the Fury.
Wargs still going to try and fight back. Sap 7 will flicker away, use the fire, but Worst Turtle catches him out, throws him back, but that shield from Kha'Zix is providing so much for Sap all throughout this fight. Now it's Worst Turtle in danger. He's got to jump away. Is there enough peel from Panvich? It's a good knock-up. But Worst Turtle, does he have the cooldowns to get away?
No!
Oh, no, he walks into it, Julio. He lands the baseball, and that's a kill for Hex Mambo. The jungler for the Wargs down, and maybe a little bit more. Panvich stunned out by Kha'Zix, but not quite enough follow-up damage by Sap.
Yeah, has a little bit of poke, but it's the blue buff that they were after. We'll be able to steal that one away. All the while, Titans starting to meet on the left-hand side. Davey peppering in some damage, but he's got Julio behind him.
Julio gets the push onto 1. Spudio tries to follow up with some return, but Davey quick on the Aegis avoids most of that damage. Panvich back to full HP. Warriors will wait by as the Titans clash on the left side of the map. Hexmon will be the first ones to clear that one out. And Niflheim Warriors have to wait until it crawls its way up to their Tier 2 tower before they have an opportunity to knock it down. Actually, looking back at some of the changes, we were asking, maybe what's brought about the return of Fafnir even for some of these compositions where you don't see too many hunters. Looking back at one of the buffs he actually received back in 10.6, I don't remember if it was the bonus balance or just the 10.6 release. Max rank of his ultimate, 60-second duration that he gets to be in that dragon form, up from 40 what it was before. That's massive to be able to get that many extra cooldowns.
It is. Essentially just another entire rotation of his abilities there. Incredibly powerful. Allows him to have access to double stun and AoE coerce. So Kha'Zix going to be looking to leverage that, and we'll be able to do so relatively soon. He's level 17, 3 off 20. Going to be a little while until he gets there. It's the Niflheim Wargs now on the defensive, trying to move themselves forward, spot out this Fire Giant. So much presence from Hex Mambo, and vision control means that the Wargs have to face check it. But in Smite, in the Fog of War and how it works, you can wait for that Fire Giant to get pulled out, wait and see that Ring of Fire spawn up, or even some of those meteors, before you know it's actually been pulled. So no real reason to step up just yet.
Double stun on the front line. Julio doesn't necessarily care about the damage. Again, shield from Kha'Zix's starter. Make sure that Julio doesn't take a whole lot of damage from any of it. Panvich, not so fortunate. About a quarter of his HP gone in an instant. From the combo of Hex Mambo, who has set themselves up around the Fire Giant once more. Trying to get some of that ward coverage out there. No wards remaining in pocket for Mambo. A couple of sentries for the Wargs. They can find their way in towards this pit. They can get themselves some vision. Fire started by Kha'Zix and Spudio, but now it's potential to have to turn around and maybe walk out. For Worst Turtle, that is. He gets hit by the combo of Spudio. Now Panvich, in the middle of 3, gets up into the ultimate just in time, but Death from above is melting through this Cthulhu's health bar. Not quite enough. Panvich heals, but Johnny's dunk is enough damage to knock him down. Now it's a 5v4 in the fight, and Julio is going to fight 2 by himself. Sap standing by near to give him some support. His Worst Turtle then turns his sides towards the mid laner, but Sap 7 is doing way more damage than Worst Turtle is. Julio's going to try to keep this going. Boulder blocks out Davey, but he gets a Bifrost out. Kha'Zix tries to jump back in, but it's just not enough. Davey hit by Julio, who feels like he's doing just about everything, and so is Hawk in return. Takes down Sap 7.
Julio still moving forward, but Hawk's got damage, and Kha'Zix is real low here. Even Johnny would fall down to a stun, just able to hammer himself out.
Spudio beads, wall from Johnny, blocks off Preds and Hawk, but it's also blocked off Julio, who's still fighting in all of this. He has been the beginning of the fight and might just be the end of it. Worst Turtle jumps in, picked up by Julio, shoved against the wall, and this fight's gone on for so long that Spudio's got ultimate again. He turns around and takes down Worst Turtle, but unfortunately for support,
Johnny.
His life goes out. Johnny dunks in for a second time this fight, but Hawk is able to beads and Aegis and return all of this damage back. Dashes away from Julio, throwing so much damage through. Miff, how long is this fight going to go?
Longer. Julio on the retreat. Silence. Good show of how much DR we've got in play there. Lasts for about half a second. Hawk did so much in that fight, J-Mac. I mean, maybe 15 bombs throughout the entirety of it. So many dashes used aggressively, just trying to peel out for his allies. Davey dropped low by the efforts of Julio. All the while, Julio sinking damage into Davey. Doesn't pay attention to what Hawk's able to accomplish behind him. Just so much value from this Agni. I think if Hex Mambo want to be able to fall back to an objective after these fights, they're going to have to deal with him first. Davey, of course, very valuable in his own right, and is the battery behind the ability of the Niflheim Wargs to look towards objectives or siege. But as far as PvP is concerned, you got to look no further than this Agni. He is the priority target.
Unfortunately, just not able to get quite enough damage in that fight to take him down. Hawk, top of the damage charts once more, 27k here at the 31-minute mark for the Agni. Maybe a slightly faster pace than what we even saw in game number 1 for his damage output. But back to the Fire Giant we go. Hex Mambo, though, surely not going to commit to this one. Sap and Spudio, they got to step out of the pit because their frontliners are already gone. We'll stand inside the stealth grass behind the pit, keeping the Niflheim Wargs guessing at where they might be.
Niflheim Wargs starting to move themselves forward. Make contact with Julio first. That's a lot of resources used.
And not going to get a kill this time. Julio able to walk out once more. Preds and Davey take a bit of damage in the back line. Panvich walks up. We saw what happened to him last time that he went into this ultimate. He got shredded through by Spudio, but this time Spudio's not even paying attention to Panvich. He's just going to throw out some CC. Panvich and the Wargs will be fine for now, but Kha'Zix's not going to go chase. Julio is back once more and is rushing through the back line. Finds the knockup, but doesn't get any follow-up after. Kha'Zix's trying to run through. Boulder gets a little bit of damage onto some of these backliners. Pred shoved against the wall. The damage from the Merlin, not enough. A quick shell will keep him alive, but Spudio instead is taken down. Hawk is doing all the work, all the damage. Dash
You're
in.
dead.
Aegis isn't going to be enough. It's another one for Hawk. as he drops down the mid laner, but Johnny will as well dunk down in, takes out the mid. It's 2 for 2, nearly 3 if Johnny can find this hammer, but he's just too far out.
Man, Hawk does so much in that fight once more. Finally, for a moment, decides to fully engage himself. Dashes forward, and Johnny, rubbing his hands together, says, yes, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. Immediate Anvil of Dawn. Does immense damage to that Agni. Maintains his beads Aegis, though. Hawk has both relics still available, so on respawn, he's just as strong, if not stronger.
Julio doesn't care about most of this poke. We're sort of waiting for that taunt to come back up. Doesn't have it yet, but by the time he gets it, Kha'Zix and Johnny are already standing by, and the Wargs have to give up their attempt at a kill of Julio, and I have to leave it at an attempt just because it felt so odd for Wargs to go for that play with both of his teammates so far away.
Just throwing out some pokes, seeing what he can do, seeing how much damage he's really got in him, and, well, drops Julio to around 50% with the help of his allies. Not much else he could have done at that point. It's not as if he was going to go solo the Fury or pull the Fire Giant, so spinning his wheels and farming out a little bit in the center of the map, seeing if maybe he could force out a Fear Relic from Julio. Maybe the beads gets used if he's concerned about a little bit further follow-up. Julio, though, plays with clear head. He won't be using that there. Johnny, though, that's dangerous. Narrowly avoids the stun from Hawk. If that connects, I mean, that's half of Johnny's HP.
Wargs now back on defense. Hex Mambo keeps their push up. It started around a couple of pulls by Fire Giants, led into multiple skirmishes outside of the pit.
Deja vu.
I know. Now we're right back to it. Fire Giant just need Hex Mambo to start it. We'll call it a third time's the charm. But it's Julio walking up. Julio eating burst damage. And able to walk out. Panvich blinks to the back line, goes into the ultimate. Johnny already forced away. Panvich still trying to fight back in, but instead we'll just try and sustain up the team. Might even drop out of his ultimate sooner if need be. Julio's just been the eye of damage from the Niflheim Wargs. He's been the one soaking it up like a lightning rod. And every single time, he just teleports right back in at full HP to start it again.
Yeah, Sigil, Spirit Robe, and a full defense build, barring Golden Blade, which will probably get sold before too long. Means that Julio is nigh unkillable. Would take a massive, concentrated effort from every member of the Niflheim Wargs to shut him down. So I think maybe look elsewhere. Julio, not exactly threatening on his own. It's just the CC that he brings to his team and the ability to reposition his enemies. Otherwise, damage output, not exactly there. Pyromancer, on the mend, rejoins the realm of the living, and it's Sap 7 in the defensive positioning. Both teams staring each other down, neither one confident in their ability to just take the fight until Hex Mambo breaks the stalemate. Spudio pulls Pyro, and it's going quick.
Pyromancer to Hex Mambo, no answer back from the Wargs. Means another objective goes the way of Mambo. Niflheim Wargs, though, they said, okay, well, if we can't kill Julio, maybe we can try and find Johnny. Problem is, Johnny's just mobile enough.
No.
Fire Giant started and immediately reset by Hex Mambo. Just a drive-by damage. Johnny, he's got to use his Aegis. He's able to hammer out, but War Turtle's got to jump away. So, junglers both out of this fight, and Panvich's ultimate used defensively. Only finds a knockup on a Kha'Zix this time. Panvich is running as fast as he can. Julio still surfing around the jungle on this Hercules, unable and unfazed by what the Niflheim Wargs are able to do. Fire Giant, this might be the pull now that we've been waiting for as Hex Mambo go right back to the objective.
In a battle of transformations, Kha'Zix lasts longer and is channeled second. Sap 7, though, dropped real low. Down to about 10%.
Hawk able to dash away. Pred's just fine. Still healthy HP bars for Mambo. Taunt only hits Julio this time. So not going to get much more beyond there. Niflheim Wargs have delayed just long enough to reset themselves, and now it's Hex Mambo who have to reset. 3 players sent back to base. Julio still standing by to make sure that the Wargs don't try and pull fire.
And maybe for the first time in the last 15 or so minutes, the game state changes a bit as the Tier 1 tower is knocked down in mid, the Niflheim Wargs. Remove a bastion of safety, if you could call it that. Sap 7, drop down to half once more. That poke is just crazy.
Said ultimate, Hawk's able to get back in. Boulder's got to be needed, but doesn't get the pop in time. He's dropped before anything, and Johnny dunks in. Gets beads away from Davey. A Spirit Ball does connect on top. And Pred's going through. Where's Warsorrel doing this entire fight? He's standing all the way in the back line. Standing right by the stealth grass. Stun hits Kha'Zix once more, but Kha'Zix unfazed by the damage. It's a man advantage for Hex Mambo, but not doing anything with it.
And the Niflheim Wargs are almost entirely reliant on Hawk as far as player damage is concerned. He's just about matching the entirety of his team put together, and so Hex Mambo correct now to start sieging forward. You've dealt with the hard part. Now that Hawk's off the map, you got 30 seconds to play with.
Pick up by Julio, push onto Davey, and a boulder. Aegis out. Davey will live. And Johnny wanted to close out that kill, but just too far out of range. 15 seconds till Hawk is back, but no relics on Davey will be dangerous for him as this next team fight breaks out. We return near the Fire Giant once more. Will be started by Kha'Zix. Quick transform into the dragon form.
This is dangerous.
And now it's Pretz walking up. Hawk is back. It'll take him a moment to get himself back into the fight, but
Sap's too low.
with Panvid standing by, with Sap at half HP, Niflheim Wargs might be able to try and fight this one back. Johnny goes up into the sky. It's a dunk down on Davey. He's got no relics, but he's got a lot of protection from his support. Keeps him alive, and now it's Johnny who is low. The Wargs are pushing back in. Panvich goes up into the sky for the ultimate, finds a knockup on the tube, and Hawk tries to get some extra damage, but he's taking a lot in this fight. Niflheim Wargs, they get their one pick, and now it's time to reset.
Circle protection timing just perfect there from Preds. Davey did not have either of his relics available, so that dunk from Johnny would have just killed, but the damage mitigation and healing able to keep him from falling into the underworld there. And the Niflheim Wargs find their 1-for-0 trade. 40 seconds left on Julio's respawn, but it's not the same as when Hawk had died, and that Julio's got teleport, so it is legitimately 30 exact seconds until he's able to rejoin the team fight. If the Niflheim Wargs want to get something done while he's dead, they're going to have to do it very quickly. Looking at relics as they stand, Sap7 has both. Probably not going to kill him. Even Spadio has both too. Maybe it's just Johnny they could really knock down.
Panvich walks up, tries to find Sap. It's Worst Turtle to the back line. Does get the ultimate on top, but it's a quick bead, or it's a quick flicker out, I should say. And now with an ultimate on top, Sap7 has to use those beads to get away. Still has the Aegis available if need be, but it's Worst Turtle who's got to jump away. He set ultimate, throwing at Worst Turtle's feet, but Worst Turtle's left the fight. He's slowed down by the damage, and the ultimate from above, it's missed by Johnny, and it's not quite enough from Spadio. Worst Turtle lives, but only just barely.
I might be the biggest ESET support fan on the planet right now. He is just giving so many HP shields up. That was, what, 3 HP shields on a Worst Turtle? Thanks to that silence, just keeps him alive throughout it all. A full-channeled Martikaras ultimate at that. I mean, just ridiculous, the amount of value this ESET has found. Props to Worst Turtle as well. He's the one that gets things started there and actually burns the beads and Aegis away from Sap7. So what was previously just an opportunity to kill Johnny now has expanded itself a bit as we move into this next 5-on-5 around the Fire Giant. Sap7 going to be real safe, I suppose. Safe in that he's playing far back. Unsafe in that he has no resources.
He's not going to want to stand anywhere near one of the members of Niflheim Warg, especially if Worst Turtle can get that back on again. If he throws him anywhere within range of Hawk.
Talk about Worst Turtle's juke, too, on the ultimate from Thor. I mean, just perfect.
Great play by them, and maybe needs that again. Sap7, he's got no relics, he's got no life. Worst Turtle starts it up with Panvich to take him down. But look at Preds in the backline. Worst Turtle's got to jump away. Johnny dunks down, but Spadio takes out Worst Turtle before it's even needed. Panvich still fighting to keep his team alive. Davey just got his beads up, and they're already back on cooldown. But now Julio's got nothing left in the tank.
That guy could
die. Dive in by Hawk. He takes down one, the bomb just off the mark from Kha'Zix, and Hawk goes down yet again. Stun on top of Johnny from Preds. But look at the return fire from Spadio. There's just too much damage coming from this Martikaras.
Shell just a bit late there from Preds. Had it connected, maybe. Wasn't able to keep his mid laner alive for a moment longer. Fortunately for the Niflheim Wargs, of the 3 members that still draw breath, Davey is one of the 2 damage dealers on his team. So maybe enough threat to keep Hex Mambo from doing anything risky here. Fire Giant going to go ignored. Gold Fury, though, might just get pulled out. And it's Davey who checks the Fire Giant pit and says, hey, they're not here.
Davey and Preds to try and take this one. Kha'Zix steps up. He's spotted this out. That should be the end of the attempt there.
Stops
even
the Fury.
with Davey. No crit in hand, so it's going to take a long time to shred through. Panvich isn't there. He's getting poked out. Niflheim Wargs give up their attempted sneak of the Fire Giant, but given how late in the game we are, only one Primal Fury's gone down, no crit. That would have been a long time that Davey and Preds would have needed to have bought for them to take that one down alone.
Yeah, and even with Kha'Zix there too, it's not as if there's really great confirmation from the Niflheim Wargs, so not only would it have taken a long time, but it would have been a coin toss. So maybe an opportunity lost from Hex Mambo. They probably could have just done the Fury and then rotated over, but Game 1 going 58 minutes and being with your back against the wall here in Game 2, 43 minutes in, I can understand not wanting to risk it for a Fury when the Fire Giant's been pulled. So both teams will go ahead and reassume the position. That's a capital T on the, because we've spent so much time here within the last 2 games. Group up around the Fire Giant, wait for an opportunity, see if you can find that key pick to open up the doors, blow open the doors of this game. So I look towards the relics. For the most part, Niflheim Wargs at full strength in that department, whereas on the other end, Spudio still lacking Aegis for about 30 seconds.
So now Hex Mambo. They got the offensive position in the pit. Warg sitting far back. We've seen this many a times. That's how they got their first Fire Giant. Wait for Mambo to try and do some of the work to start the fight and then punish them. With all relics except for Davies' beads, up in 20 seconds, the Wargs still playing careful. Hex Mambo, they've got everything except Aegis from Spudio back in less than 10. Got time to play with. It seems that both teams want their carries, their damage dealers, to be as safe as possible moving into this next fight. Because we are in territory of take out enough players. You might not even need a Fire Giant, just end the game at this point. So both teams playing cautiously.
And it doesn't even need to be a whole lot of players, right? If it's just Sap7 and Spudio die and they're 5 strong on Niflheim Wargs, they could likely just end the game. And the same is true of Hex Mambo. Kill the damage dealers and it's over.
Kha'Zix thrown back by Wargs, and Panvich up in the transform as well, but not going to get much more beyond there. Didn't even get a relic from Hex Mambo with that. 2 ultimates, 2 blinks, empty-handed for Niflheim Wargs. Hex Mambo can just walk back at them.
They could. They're stepping forward here. Worst Turtle narrowly avoids the driving strike. Sap7 shows his hand over the wall. Now, Niflheim Wargs aware of the positioning of each member of Hex Mambo. Fire Giant not pulled just yet as the Wargs start to move themselves forward slowly. Julio finds the pull, gets the beads off of Hawk. That is a massive win for Hex Mambo. All the while, but to knock down that Pyromancer too. Put a second Runic Bomb in pocket. Whole lot of true damage available on these structures, or potentially the Fire Giant itself. So where does that leave us? No ultimate for Panvich. We're halfway back to the cooldown, but no relics for Panvich either. Means he's going to have a hard time using that ultimate properly. As well as no beads on Hawk. A dunk from Johnny might just kill him before Hawk's even allowed to use the Aegis. This is a very dangerous position for the Wargs.
Kha'Zix stepping forward. Silence. Spirit Ball. Couple of bombs. Takes about a quarter of his HP. Slow burn on the health bar of the Fafnir. Gotta mention, though, just because I don't think I've seen it in competitive yet, Amulet of Silence from Kha'Zix on this Fafnir.
Someone tweeted about that recently.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen
Flare
this
Boot?
item competitively. I think it was one of our Olympians was asking about the item, what people's thoughts were on it. It's just we don't see it. You gotta stand around, see some abilities cast around you, and then your next auto on a god silences them. Just doesn't seem like it gets an insane amount of it. In theory, it sounds great, but in execution, we just haven't really seen it work out yet.
Yeah, but when you're playing Fafnir and you're so far into that enemy backline so consistently, it feels like you'll always have that silence auto attack available, barring the internal 15-second cooldown. So a few targets that he might be able to find some value on. Either way, disruption going to be very difficult to deal with. I like it. You know, I want to see how it plays. It's going to be really hard to parse that information into in the light explosions that are a SMITE team fight, but I'm sure it won't be hard for Niflheim Wargs to identify when it's happened to them themselves. We'll see whether or not Kha'Zix can make a game-changing play with that one. 20 seconds left on the beads from Hawk. A lot of spinning of the wheels here has essentially allowed the Niflheim Wargs to find all their resources again.
Fire Giant started up. Ring of Fire's there. Panvich steps forward the rest of the team. Boulder slams into Preds. He's got to use the ultimate. Spudio goes up in the sky to try and take him down, but Circle Protection's just a little too much. It's a double knockup by Panvich.
Good start.
Worst Turtle goes in, finds an ult on a Julio, but Fire Giant's still active through this fight and is keeping it going maybe a little longer than either team wanted it to. Niflheim Wargs burn a couple of resources away from Hex Mambo, who jump right back in. It's Kha'Zix in the middle, transforms into the dragon, but now he's got no targets. Everybody has already bought enough space to themselves to escape.
Sap 7 in a precarious position alone on the right side of this team fight. Still playing very far forward here. If Worst Turtle spots him, could be an immediate initiation instead. Reset once more. Let's look at the relics. Seems like the only thing separating these teams now is relics and potions. No beads on Hawk. He lost those once more. Panvich as well. Loses out on the teleport. But on the other hand, Hex Mambo use a whole lot of their own. Julio out of relics. Johnny no beads. And no relics on the support. Kha'Zix either. That Sunder. So important for the kill confirmation. If you want to shred Panvich once he descends into madness, you need that Sunder. If you want to deal with this incredibly tanky E-set, you need that Sunder. And for 30 seconds, they won't have it. Maybe we see both teams spin their wheels for a moment longer. Wait for some of these relics to come back up.
Sound to farm Wargs. A slight advantage in the relics. As mentioned earlier, still the 70 seconds until Hawk gets his back. By that point, Hex Mambo will have theirs up for at least 10 seconds prior to that. Stun onto Julio, not going to get much. It's the return fire from Spudio and from Sap 7 that's really doing the brunt. It's the Niflheim Wargs. 54,000 player damage from Hawk. Game number 2. Trying to match what he was able to do in game number 1. Throws out a single bomb and he just keeps stacking up 700-800 damage every time he connects with a carry.
Yeah, it's really difficult for either team to actually commit to the fight because the poke on both sides has just been so staggering. Pyromancer to Hex Mambo once more. They've held the slight advantage in this Fire Giant dance for a good long while. I believe the third Pyromancer they've been able to knock down since this dance had started. And that'll put the third Runic Bomb in pocket for whoever elects to pick it up. But a dash forward from Worst Turtle connects with Spudio. It's blink for beads trade.
I'm sure one that Worst Turtle is happy to take. Julio walking forward, but eats 2 separate CCs. Sap 7, he flickers into the backline, and now it's Worst Turtle and Panvich collapsing in as Sap 7 and the squad gone too far. Knockup connects with Kha'Zix, gets the beads away from Sap. Niflheim Wargs have reset themselves.
It's a good poke.
But it needed a big ultimate from Panvich to do so. Spudio, no beads or Aegis. Worst Turtle, barely any HP left after that combo. Thor plus Marty does a lot.
Man, that is well-timed from Johnny on the wall. Catches out Worst Turtle just as he lands, and now it's Johnny up to the air.
Where does he go? Dash from Hawk has already been used. The dunk, will it be inside the tower? It'll be just shy of it. Pred's still alive. Kha'Zix eating some poke in dragon form. Spirit Ball keeps him locked down. And Julio is still nearly full HP. He walks in, finds the pickup, but too far away, and Pred's just a little too tanky, lives under the tier 2.
Hex Mambo now have got a significant advantage around the Fire Giant pit. Pulled and burning slowly. Hawk at 60%, Panvich at 80, Davey at 70. Can they even move forward? They've got some time to think about it. This Fire Giant, its HP is not moving.
It's taking a little too long for Hex Mambo. It's given Wargs enough time to reset. Worst Turtle jumps into the back line. He finds Sap 7, throws him back. The explosion from the Pridwin. Sap 7's already at half, and Spudio's in the air. Fire Giant gets picked up by the Niflheim Wargs instead. Worst Turtle may have just traded his life for a Fire Giant for the rest of the squad. 78 seconds till he is back, but the Wargs are already on the full retreat.
They're so far away, I don't think Hex Mambo could catch them. And if they try, they might walk into a wall of damage. Hawk doing so much for his team. Hex Mambo stuck around too long.
He's going back. Panvich, he's got the ultimate, finds the knockup on nobody this time. A quick flicker
Watch
out.
Johnny.
But Johnny to the sky. He's got to find Hawk. He's got to take out the worst threat against him. But Beads and Aegis are there. A dash out. Johnny forced away from the fight. The Wargs live through. And Hex Mambo may just be worse for wear. Double bomb on top of Julio. He's gone. Sap 7 tries to fight back. But Hawk does so much damage on this Agni. If he gets one combo,
he's doing it.
A dash in, the stun is good, but a bomb, the stun actually procs the heroism once more, and it's the only thing that saves Sap.
Heroism looking like a great investment there for Hex Mambo. Spudio nearly stunned out. Hawk, quarter HP, but he doesn't look scared to me, doing so much damage right now. This Agni is the target. You said he's the one that needs to be dealt with. I agree. He is doing just about everything for his team, and now with Enhanced Fire Giant on 4 members. Worst Turtle missing out on it, but has Bumba's Hammer for sustain anyway. Should be able to heal up on these longer fights if there's any jungle camps up or minion waves as they spawn. I think the Niflheim Wargs have finally accomplished what they'd set out to do 30 minutes ago when the Fire Giant was looked at the first time. They've broken the stalemate. They get to start looking at that siege.
Wargs go for an Oni Fury. Worst Turtle just spawns back in. Hex Mambo walk up. Will they even try and go for a full steal? Oni Fury reset once more.
Is this worth fighting over?
Wargs just biding time, waiting for Worst Turtle to rejoin the fray. Hex Mambo spent so much time trying to maybe poke this one out, steal it. I don't think they noticed that Worst Turtle is right back in. Taunt connects to Spudio. Spudio, beads are gone. Aegis not needed yet. He goes up for the ultimate instead. But Worst Turtle is not done. He blinks forward. He's just waiting to close gap for the ultimate onto Spudio. He'll find him, throws him back in. Sap's gone. Spudio's gone. It's a double kill for Davey. The boulder will not find anything. It's a triple kill for Davey. It is only the front line left for Hex Mambo. Julio finds one. Hawk, the biggest threat, is gone, but you still got the rest of the damage coming from Davey and the company. Davey gets his quadra kill. It's only Kha'Zix left. Niflheim Wargs, after 50 minutes of waiting, 50 minutes needing an opportunity, they get their push at Fire. They get it at the Fury. And unless Kha'Zix can find the miracle defense, they will win out your EU SCC Gauntlet.
It has taken 112 in-game minutes to do it, but only 2 games in this best-of-3 set for the Niflheim Wargs to come out on top, dethroning the European SCC top seed and securing themselves a position moving forward. Clean play to the Wargs. Clean European distinct play style here. All battling over neutral objectives. Small micro wins separating these engagements. But at the end of the day, it's the Wargs and Davey that gets it done.
Davey was 0-1-6 before that Fire Giant fight. Ends the game 5-1-6. An unofficial pentakill. They got that last kill on the Kha'Zix. Way too late for the accolade. But we'll give it to him in our hearts at the very least. Niflheim Wargs, I mean, you said it best. 112 plus minutes of constantly battling the same team in just these 2 games now nets them a win. 2 wins over the course of this tournament from their matchup against the Tanuki, finding a 3-game set there, and now 2 here against Hex Mambo have netted the Niflheim Wargs the Gauntlet win.
We do have to shout out the Tanuki as well. I mean, they had a miracle run throughout this Gauntlet, starting out in the very first set. Take out, was it 4 teams on the way to the 2nd seed where the Niflheim Wargs took up that mantle and made sure they, I suppose, carried on the spirit of Yomi Tanuki.
Yeah, Niflheim Wargs knocked down the Tanuki after a really strong run by the Tanuki, but this game, again, was pretty much the Hawk show as far as damage is concerned by Niflheim Wargs up until the very tail end of it. Game number 1, 73,000 damage in the game. This one, I'm sure he was very close to that same number. I think 60-some-odd going into the Fire Giant fight. Until Hawk went down, it felt like the Hex Mambo just could not even attempt to try and break into the base or this Fire Giant.
Speaking of Hex Mambo, the decision-making behind going to the Oni Fury and taking a defense there, difficult to remember what we talked about 50-some-odd minutes ago, but it was the ability of Sap 7 and Merlin and this composition from Hex Mambo to defend the base much more easily than they would have in the previous match, but instead, forego it. They spend 30 minutes fighting over the Fire Giant and say, well, we're not going to take it in our base. It's not worth our time. Let's go ahead and fight neutral territory into a 4-man EFG team. Just seems like an avoidable few deaths there. Instead, maybe had they played on their Phoenix, we could be talking about a 60, 70, 80-minute game. Instead, it's the Niflheim Wargs who concisely win. They see one moment of weakness and they exploit it.
So 73,000 in game 1, 64,000 in game 2 for Hawk.
Is that good?
It's pretty good, I'd say.
I think it's pretty good.
I'd say that's pretty good. Combined, I'm going to try and fast math, 137,000 damage in 2 games for your mid lane Agni.
That was my last 2 months.
Hawk's got to feel pretty good. And remember, this is the team that booted Hawk away. The Hex Mambo said, hey, we want to play with Sap 7 as opposed to Hawk. Now Hawk gets his juicy revenge against his old team. Jumping here with Niflheim Wargs. Got to feel doubly sweet for him.
Oh, I'm sure it does. At any time you get replaced and you get the opportunity to play against your previous teammates, there's a little bit something extra in it for you. And Hawk, of course, not only is it his ex-teammates, but it's also a seeding upset. That is the 2nd seed dethroning the 1st seed. Just a crazy line of events that find us here, J-Mac.
Yeah, And this SEC Gauntlet, it all started out with the Yomi Tanuki all the way back just yesterday, that first set, fighting up against the Bolts, 3-game set between them. Yomi Tanuki win out, then they go up against the Solar Scarabs, find a 2-0, go against the Titans, find a 2-0, and then go all 3 against the Wargs today in our first matchup of the day, and that's the first time we see the Yomi Tanuki fall down. This is the only set that we didn't talk about the Yomi Tanuki as a squad for actual discussion points, because Niflheim Wargs find their win against the Tanuki in set 1 of the day, and then today a 2-0 against the #1 seeded Hex Mambo, your team to move on. A nice little prize cash in pocket for the squad. And you're going to come out in August for the Roll Stars event, where they'll play with the SPL teams in their designated chance. So all of them will have a chance to be drafted onto those teams.
Very exciting stuff for the Niflheim Wargs, as we'll see them stateside in the coming month. Man, what a crazy pace to that set, J-Mac. It almost reminded me a bit of the PK run at Worlds, where every game was going the absolute distance, and it was this incredibly reactive play style. Great stuff from the Niflheim Wargs. That is a very draining play style. It is much less of a mental drain to say, okay, we're going to run it down, and we're going to either win or lose in 30 minutes. Instead to say, I don't care what it takes or how long it takes. We will drag this out until we feel like we are in a good position. And to be able to play for, what did you say? It was 117 minutes or something along those lines of in-game time. Just absolutely ridiculous. They've got to be exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, after nearly 2 hours of play in one set and then 90-some-odd minutes, maybe upwards of 100 minutes of play in the first set that they had to play. Long day for Niflheim Wargs that they win out. But Mifflin, that's not the end of the Gauntlets. This was just Europe. It's not going to be happening today, but next weekend when you tune in, we've got the North American Gauntlet. We can take a look at the teams for that one. Starting it all off will be the Xibalba Storm and the Kowloon Wardens in our first match. And then, very similar to this past weekend, the winner of that moves on, face the #4 Aru Scorpions. Then winner goes to face the Valkyries, then the Weavers, and then the Sages at the very top to see if they can be the gatekeepers to the Roll Stars event for there. And that'll be how the North American one breaks down. Again, it'll be best of 3s, 3 matches on Saturday, 2 matches on Sunday to see who will win out and be the North American representatives of the SCC joining in for the Roll Stars to go alongside with the Niflheim Wargs for the SCC.
Man, the Xibalba Storm, I mean, they've got a tough performance to try and match up with, right? If we're going to compare them apples to apples, they'd have to reprise the performance of Yomi Tanuki, take out the first 3 teams they meet up against. I mean, it's exciting stuff. This Gauntlet format, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's certainly a very fun one to watch, but also just such a draining one. You think back, and you even highlighted at the very top of the weekend, the Oxygen Supremacy run that we saw years back. Those are miracle-style runs, and the Yomi Tanuki nearly were able to pull one of those off, but just fell short. Congratulations to the Niflheim Wargs on winning the EUSCC Gauntlet. That's it for this weekend, but make sure that you are tuning in on Saturday next weekend as we kick things off with the North American Gauntlet. But for us, that's it today. On behalf of myself, Mifflin, and Cassidy, everyone behind the scenes, thanks for watching, and we'll see you Saturday for the Gauntlet.